Game over, man. Game over.
You're gonna need a bigger potion.
So serious.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast.
Welcome to episode 532 for May 2nd, 2023. And I'm Jada Duran.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
I'm Ryan McQuaid.
And I'm Jay Ledbetter.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody. It's the first time the four of us have been together.
What is
quite a while.
happening here?
Been a minute.
Bye, guys.
Been a
I'm going to
minute.
head out. I just wanted to do the intro.
Just do the intro. Bye, Ryan. We'll see you. Enjoy the Lakers game.
We are just trying.
yeah,
We're
me
just
and
trying to
Jay.
prove that we're still friends here. We're all still friends. We still know each other.
Yeah, it's been quite the chaotic last several weeks. I do appreciate you guys holding down the fort, doing such a great job. I've been sprinkled in here and there over the last few weeks. I got to do a review with Brendan, and I got to do one with Jay. But this is my first main show episode since the birth of Andrew, so
What the hell?
it's very
You have
exciting.
anything with me. This is wrong. That's
I know
rude.
we have to
You know
set
what?
something up. I got to set
you know-
something up with Ryan.
Your people reach out to my people.
I think we know why that is, because when the two of you get together, just the two of you, it tends to be like a 4-hour show.
Listen,
Which
I've
we
got
haven't
notes-
tested that
That's it,
yet.
that's
We
it.
I
haven't
mean, I've
tested
got
that
notes
theory
on
yet.
this,
Yeah.
and I'm going to start reading them right now. No, I'm just
Hold on. Just got a text from the audience. They said, we don't want to test that. Interesting.
Oh, yeah. Look, it's Brendan and I went an hour on Cocaine Bear, and you guys. went
Yeah, I'm
an
not one
hour
to talk, I guess.
So it's always possible that Ryan and I would take some sort of, we could have done Renfield and gone 2 hours. It's possible.
No.
Who knows?
not possible because that movie
No,
sucks.
okay, maybe not with
No
that
pun
movie.
intended.
Maybe Peter Pan. Who knows? Maybe I picked the wrong film. Either way,
maybe. I don't
Cocaine
know.
Bear just made us mad, JD. We had a lot to say about that.
we did.
Y'all also did a lot of background on the actual, like, Cocaine Bear.
Yeah,
inside
we
of the
did. We did a
mall
lot
or
of
whatever it
background.
was.
Yeah, you guys
It
got
was
into real
more
mythology.
tangents.
You really
You have
really did a
personal
Jay and
experience
Ryan
with the
deep dive.
Cocaine Bear.
We do.
Yeah,
I've
the
seen the
Kentucky of it
Cocaine
all.
Bear. Yeah.
And I'll
Turns
tell you,
out,
it's
yeah.
more interesting than the actual movie.
Exactly, yeah. But it is very exciting, the four of us getting together, and I'm very excited for this week's show. I mentioned this the last time that Brendan and I got together. We're here to talk about not if the Kraken can beat the Avalanche, but now the Dallas Stars. I was correct about round one. The Kraken did it. Now we're on to round two. That's what we're here to talk about this
They're
week.
gonna lose.
Ryan, remember when sometimes we've talked about sports and JD gets mad at us? Like, you can't
Yeah.
do sports at the
I
beginning.
want to
you gotta
roll
do
the
sports
tape
at
back
the
to
end.
those times.
Yeah,
Oh, wait,
that was the old
6
show.
months ago.
It's the new show now. So,
As long as it's
Chaos
hockey, it gets to
reigns.
go up front.
yeah.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah. Talk about being biased.
Exactly. No, actually,
I can't believe we're talking about that instead of the Bruins.
or the draft.
Oh, I could go on about the Bruins. That's for sure.
I think you could go on about the Lions draft strategy.
or that too. There's lots of sports
that
talk
too,
that we
yeah.
could maybe do at
maybe at
another
the
time.
end.
I am actually very excited. There is a reason that I am here tonight. I wasn't necessarily planning on being here until Jay proposed an idea that I just could not say no to.
Look at it being
It was an
dirty.
idea.
It was an idea.
Hook, line, and sinker, indeed.
Hook, very much pun intended. Good job there, Brendan. I guess I'll use that as the transition because obviously
He really
Peter
is
Pan
turning
and
into
Wendy-
Jay.
Peter Pan and Wendy came out last weekend. We have a review of that up right now that you can go and listen to or watch at YouTube, however you listen to the show. And using that as inspiration, obviously, there was the original Peter Pan Disney animated film. All the way back in, what was that, 1950 that film came out? Something around-
1953.
53, okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, those 3 years make a difference.
3 years
do.
makes a huge difference.
Hey, that was the year that both my parents were born, so I have to remember that one.
There you go.
Wow.
That's otherwise Brendan wouldn't be here.
Yep.
1953.
Thank you, Mom and Dad.
Sponsors of the show, 1953.
At
You
any
want a good
rate,
year.
Hey, Mother's
It's not
Day is
with
this
Ridley
month,
Scott
so
and
Mother's Day
Russell
is around
Crowe.
the corner.
It's where
And
beer
a great gift for Mother's Day is an InSession Film T-shirt. So go on over
There
to
you
the
go.
website,
Wow, we're
InSessionFilm.com.
plugging at the
get
beginning.
your t-shirt.
Man. We're talking about sports at the
Absolute-
beginning. We're plugging at the beginning. This is a whole new era.
Sounds like
We're
Alec
reversing
Baldwin.
it, yeah.
Always be plugging.
Always
Yeah.
be plugging. We're going all the way back to the 1940s and 50s, as we're going to be talking about Disney's golden and silver ages of animation. But with a little bit of a twist, we're not just heading in that direction. We're going to be ranking the 13 films from those two specific ages. We are skipping the wartime era because it's the wartime era.
Most
Everyone
of those are
is
short
familiar.
films anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone is familiar with
wants to
the
remember
films,
war. You know?
the feature films that came out during the golden and silver ages. So we're going to be ranking them. However, another twist, we're not going to be doing that individually. We're not having 4 different rankings here. Collectively, in solidarity, in unison, we are going to have one ranking. We're going to discuss it, and we're going to come up with some sort of ranking.
We have to.
Is someone
figure it
here
out.
going to be tracking this? Does someone have a trusted old spreadsheet open?
I
What?
imagine Jay does.
Oh, one man might be good for the job, and that's good old Jay's spreadsheet. Left.
Actually, you know what? I don't, but I'm
Exactly.
opening up a Google sheet
There
as we
it
speak.
goes right now.
There you go.
Live on air.
We need
We're opening
someone to
up
capture the
Excel,
minutes here.
You know,
Exactly.
get out those Google Sheets, folks.
I guess as Jay is pulling up that Google Doc there, do you guys have any? Obviously, I don't want to get into the specificities of these films. We'll talk about it, but how do we feel about these two ages on the whole, just broadly speaking?
That's a good question. It's a great question. It's interesting to
How
watch.
think of
these-
them as?
Wait, say that again.
Say that again, Jay.
I was just gonna say. I was just saying a lot more mediocre than you think of them as. Kind of in hindsight.
Well, that's
you know.
that's what I was gonna say. Is that when you rewatch them all nowadays, especially for people our age who grew up with different eras of animation, not just Disney. You know, we look at the Renaissance era, which we're not going to be talking about here, but you kind of get pigeonholed to a certain animation type for a certain crowd, for a certain demographic, what it means for the current times. And you start to realize how certain traditional values were sort of suffocating back with those old animated movies from Disney. And it just makes you sort of rethink what they meant. The silver era, I think we're going to have a lot of interesting debating. I feel like that's where things might get most interesting here. But I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, these laid the foundation for the later slate of films that I'm sure we'll do on another episode down the road. The Disney Renaissance, the other eras, the newer eras that we're in now. This is where we get to see all these wonderful Disney live action remakes that we all love so much get made. You know,
We might even talk about some that should be remade.
Love them.
I mean, you gotta love your Maleficent movies. You gotta love, you know, your Robert Zemeckis Pinocchios. You gotta
the Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland.
Wonderlands.
Masterpiece.
Oh,
The greatest looking movie ever made.
Then Alice Through the Looking Glass. Oh my God! Just to talk about the cinematic eyesore of the year. But
Okay, let's get the negativity out of the way because we're not talking about those.
I think that you're kind of right in that when we look at them through our lens, I think we are so spoiled because the Disney Renaissance just has nothing but bangers in it. You know what I mean? Like if we didn't, I think if when we do that list, that's gonna be really hard because all of us have different attachments.
I gotta say,
Yeah.
I think you're
A lot of great ones.
overhyping it a little bit.
Oh, I think the
There
Disney
are a
Renaissance.
lot from the Renaissance era that I think are really bad.
No, you're wrong.
Wow.
Yeah. so-
Hercules sucks.
Oh,
I
I
agree.
disagree.
Hate that movie.
Disagree.
So
See,
bad.
so JD, Jay, and myself will be on that episode. Can't wait for that down the road. Guess to be determined later. But
I hear this guy Brendan Cassidy's a pretty good guest.
I don't know. We'll have to judge that ourselves. We'll put it up to
He's
him.
got some
Anyway.
trash opinions.
But anyway, no, I think that Jay hates when I do this, but I'm going to say it. When you kind of watch some of these movies too, you got to put it through the mindset a little bit of when they were made and the audience in which they were made for. And Jay and I have talked about this many years where sometimes you give it a little bit of a curve because of that, but then sometimes the movie's just either so out of place or does something so weird or something so different that you can't get over that either. So, and that's where a lot of these aren't perfect, but
there are a lot of movies here where it's like, I appreciate this more than I like it.
Yeah.
There are some of those.
Yeah. And there are
the swings here are interesting. Yeah.
There are a lot that almost feel like vibes that we almost find ourselves suffocated by a certain musicality or animation style that makes us maybe overlook some of the values that they may have represented anywhere between the 1930s to the 1960s.
And I'll say the movies that I'll kind of just spoil it a little bit. I think the more vibey movies are actually the Silver Age, which Brendan, I know you said you didn't like as much, but
there are some I really do.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be really interesting because I do agree with the idea that some of these certainly haven't held up over time. I also think that not only do these two ages, specifically the Golden Age, I think it has two of Disney's very best films and two simply all-time animated films. Yeah, I think they're that good. So, I think this is Disney at its peak in a lot of ways as well. And it's also Disney taking its most daring risk. Like some of these movies that we're going to talk about would never get made today. They wouldn't even be talked about.
The first feature-length animated film is a risk in and of itself. I mean, Snow White is it's revolutionary.
Absolutely. And for sure, and some of those risk, again, it comes with that the old adage of for better and worse. It doesn't always work out, but I at least appreciate the swings that a lot of these films make.
And it's like a history lesson. It's like a history lesson, right? Sometimes I think the best history lessons are ones that are still littered with problematic content because it teaches us not to repeat those mistakes. And
you think there are some problematic elements of some of these movies?
Oh, you have no idea.
Yeah. So
I don't know what you're talking about. It seems pretty clean cut to me. I think they pass a lot of tests. Modern tests. No, I think that JD's right and y'all are right. I think there's a lot of good ones here. I think there's ones that what's interesting when you think back on this sort of era. At least for me. I remember obviously our childhoods because this is when we were watching a lot of these movies, especially on, sorry audience, a VHS player. And when you're watching these you remember moments, but then you like you guys are saying, there's vibes and moments you remember a lot from these movies, more than I think the actual whole film at large. And so when you watch them now and you're older, you remember, oh yeah, that moment's still there, but there's 90 or 80 more minutes to go with it.
Well, it's sometimes the other way around, right? Like sometimes the big moment you remember, you realize, oh my God, this is actually like way later in the movie than I thought.
That was Bambi for me.
You seem to be talking about Bambi. Yes.
No, that was the Sword in the Stone for me. We'll talk about that later. The ending of that movie, I used to think was the beginning.
Yeah.
Weird how memory works.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's kind of dive into this a little bit further. And for clarity's sake, let's go ahead and lay out the two eras. Obviously, we have the Golden Age, which includes Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, and Bambi. Into the Silver Age with Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, Sleeping Beauty, 101 Dalmatians, The Sword in the Stone, and The Jungle Book. So those 13 films are the movies
And
that we are going to be ranking.
We need to
here.
disclose that there is the war era in the middle with a bunch of kind of like anthology movies that honestly kind of don't count and nobody remembers.
Yeah, which, as we noted earlier, we are skipping those. So just
we are still covering a 30-year period. There's a huge period here between 1937, I think, was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and The Jungle Book was 1967. Wasn't that the first one that was post Walt Disney's death? Because I think he passed away in 1966. So it covers a lot of ground regardless of which eras we're focusing.
He didn't die. He's in like a cryo chamber. What are you talking about?
He's in the
coming
vault.
Back.
He's in the Disney vault.
He's just in the vault.
He's in the vault.
The Disney vault.
It's like, what are you talking about? He's just like, he's on ice in there, along with, all the Blu-rays that you can never buy at the stores anymore. What are you talking about?
Him and Ted Williams.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's get into the ranking. Let's start with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. At this
Number
point,
one. I'm saying at this point,
number one. Ballsy pick, number one.
I know if we're starting them with that one. I could go number two, but I'll go number one here.
If you want.
Well, let's talk about it. I think that movie is honestly better than I actually remembered it being, but it's not great.
I'm with you, Jay. Completely with you. I think it's one of those cases where it's hard to rank it higher for me when we get to these other films because there are so many other movies that I think bettered the formula that it essentially created. But at the same time, we have to give it credit for creating the formula. So it does earn points for simply being the first.
I do think it has some nice visuals to it. I do like the
clever.
energy of it.
Yeah,
It's clever.
It is clever.
Yeah.
It is very clever. And the one thing I also do like about it too, and again, I don't think we see this as much today, but I do love how it commits, almost anyway, to being this dour of an ending. It gets to the last 30 seconds, very literally the last 30 seconds of the film before it kind of pulls that rug out from under you. And we're reminded that this is an animated film where its target audience is going to be on the younger side of that spectrum. But up until that last 30 seconds, the film, I think, does a really good job of making you believe that it's going to end on this funeral.
Well,
and I kind of admire that take because I don't like if they were to make this film today with this narrative, I don't think you get that. I think that comes way, way more before the last 30 seconds of the film. And it's much more cheery and like you get more scenes of that, the hopefulness of this group than what we get here where it's dour. Never mind. Just as the credits come.
I don't know if it actually ends on a rather cheery note. I think the last shot of the movie, which shows the castle literally in the sky as opposed to somewhere off in the distance, could have some potential heavenly ramifications.
That's fair. That's an interpretation I would buy. Yeah.
I don't know if that was the intent, but I mean, rewatching again in preparation for this episode, I kind of sense some weird ambiguity there.
I think that tone is there. And, this is a film that's in my top 5 of the 13 that we're going to be talking about. I don't think this is one of the best of these two ages, but I do really appreciate that. Again, because that's something that would never happen today. I don't even know if it would be discussed, let alone even attempting something of that nature. And you couple that with the visuals and the energy of it and the musicality of it. Yeah. And I do think there's a lot to appreciate here among
great songs.
As you guys noted, it's the first to do it. It sets the formula. It has the legacy behind it, which certainly amps up as well. But that ending, I think is one of the best of this crop that we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah.
Can I unleash just a gripe? And
I think I know
this
what
isn't.
say.
I don't think this is universally true, and I understand why people like this, but there's this idea that dark equates to better, which I don't think is a correlation that we can really draw. The dark doesn't always mean like more mature. Sometimes it's just dark for the sake of being dark, but that doesn't make it.
It can still
better.
be cheap.
Yeah, 100%. But you do see, and we'll talk about some of the other films as we go along. But there are films where it's like, oh, it's so like twisted in a like a subtle way. It like feels like this movie for kids, but it's actually low key kind of dark. And people like always credit movies for that.
It's like when people
there's also
celebrate
so much to be said for a hopeful, sincere ending. You talk about, and I understand there are definitely instances where it's like, wow, it really threw me for a loop with that ending. Such a clever, intellectual, emotional end for that movie. And that doesn't always have to be true to make it better.
And that's not what we're saying. That is not what we're saying with regard to Snow White. And I think you're not wrong, because we sometimes see it all the time on film Twitter or just, social media in general. People will find out a movie that they're anticipating gets like an R rating or something like that. And they think, oh, this is so great. It's like, that doesn't matter. Like, that's not necessarily something to celebrate. So I don't think you're wrong when you look at it in a very like high level kind of way. But with Snow White, if I have to give any credit to the film, it's that I think it has its cake and it's able to eat it too in the end. And I don't know if that was the intent. It kind of straddles that line between hopefulness and hopelessness, which I think is kind of clever. The fact that it kind of has both is what I think is really interesting there.
Cake is good. I don't know if you guys have had a slice recently. Cake good. Pie good. Pie good too. I like the movie. I think that Brendan's right on the money where I don't think it's particularly the best of the princess films that have ever been released by Disney, but it is one that sets the mold. It's the one that you kind of have to consider higher on the list than others because of its ramifications of, are we even talking about the other 12 films on this list if this one doesn't exist? Now, that being said, it's still good. I still think it's a really good movie. I watched it a lot when I was a kid. And a lot to the point in which I annoyed a lot of my parents and whatnot, because Snow White's voice is like, it'll break your windows. That's how high that
very nasally,
very nasally. But yeah, there it is. There it is. Oh my God, there she is. Oh my God, can't wait to interview her at the end of this. Anyway, but. No, I think that's I'm with JD a little bit here. I think the ending, it can leave an audience, like especially at the time, probably more on the edge of their seat in terms of the emotionality and getting to that and not really having this formula there just yet. It's able to kind of sucker in the audience, and it's got a good villain, not a great villain, good villain, kind of template villain, obviously, Gotta love the memification of this movie too, in the zeitgeist of her going down into the cellar as the as the evil witch or whatnot. It's kind of like homage later to what Sam Raimi talked a little bit about when he was making Evil Dead and stuff like that, from what I was reading up on. So there's a lot of good things about Snow White. Yep. Gotta love the dwarves. Gotta love what's everyone's movie favorite dwarf? How about that? Everybody got a favorite? Grumpy?
100% grumpy.
Dopey.
All right. JD? Yeah, Doc. I'm a Doc guy.
Sure. I've never really thought about it.
Come on.
Which one's the crier of the group?
I do like Bashful too.
Bashful's Bashful's a sweet guy. Yeah, he's a sweet guy. I think, you know what? That's who you'll go with, JD. We'll give you a Bashful.
Ryan, can you name all 7 dwarfs off the top of your head? Ready, go.
Is it Sleepy?
Yep.
Grumpy.
Yep.
Bashful.
Yep.
Doc.
Yep.
Dopey.
Yep.
How many do I have? 5?
It's good podcasting. 5.
You have 5.
I don't know. Maleficent and
Happy.
And Happy.
Did you say Sneezy?
Sneezy's the other one. Yeah.
Damn it.
5 out of 7 ain't bad.
Great stuff.
Hey, you know what?
Great stuff. So I think I think we can agree all of us have Snow White at number 1.
Thus far.
Okay. Great. Let's move on.
I was going to put it at 13
to a movie that is going to supplant Snow White as number 1. Let's go ahead and say it.
Let's just say it right now.
Yes.
Okay, so the next one we have is Pinocchio, that came out in 1940.
Oh yeah, that's number 1. Oh, I'm sorry.
Number 1. And spoiler alert, that will not change for me as we go. So
This
that will.
I think this is going to be a competitor
competitor.
for number one overall. It is certainly not my number one of the batch here, but I feel like it's at least number one. Of JD just said it's his number one. I feel like, does somebody else maybe have it as their number one?
It's my number one.
Oh,
It's my of these 13. It's my number one. I think it's one of the best coming of age movies ever made.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best.
Where do you have
movies
it?
we've ever seen?
It is. Check the podium. Check the notes. It's my number one as well. So
There you go.
You got.
I think the consensus. Wow.
The consensus is
I have
everything else.
I have
is
it.
fighting. For
All right.
second.
Well, it's decided. We can go ahead and forget about what's going to be number one overall. Oh my god.
Hey, you asked.
I
the
like it a lot.
question.
I have
You
it.
just-
I have it at 4. So
I
still
don't think
good.
that's
I
bad.
mean, I
Yeah.
I like it a lot. I like it a lot. But
Yeah,
it's
good
not my number
movie.
one. 3 out of 4 people have it at number one. Wow. Okay. Y'all talk
Yeah,
about it.
It's such an important film. Like, I mean, I mean, like getting last year watching Del Toro's version of it, and then coming back and watching this version of it.
What about
There-
Zemeckis' version?
Oh, well, silly.
that
Jay.
certainly helps the planet at number one even further.
Yeah, yeah, that really helps it. That really solidifies it. But no, I just think that Snow White being sort of the jump in, but this is really where I think the magic of Disney comes into full effect. I think the storytelling is phenomenal. I think it's heartbreaking. I think we talk about the darker elements, right, of the film too. It really ties into, like Brendan was saying, coming of age films, the sense of growing up and that fear that one has when growing up or wanting to become an adult or a real boy. And there's a lot of sadness. The music's incredible. Jiminy Cricket obviously is an iconic character. Pinocchio, Geppetto. It's damn near a perfect film for a couple of elements that don't age well, particularly. But then again, that's the era. But honestly, it's one you kind of put on, and it's one of those of this bunch that I kind of fell under the quote unquote Disney spell when I was watching it. So it's just a good movie.
The importance is certainly there when it's sort of similar to something like Studio Ghibli in the movie My Neighbor Totoro, and how Totoro became like the mascot for Ghibli. The song When You Wish Upon a Star became the Disney song. So there is definitely some. I think what I love so much about Pinocchio, and I'm sure JD can speak to this even more eloquently, it sometimes feels like two different movies colliding in a way that I absolutely love, because I'll watch it as a great coming of age tale, like I said, but it's also a movie about parental grief. And like Pinocchio himself is just as much a main character as Geppetto. And there's a really great balancing act happening there that whenever I watch it, I sometimes feel like I can shift my perspective and I get a completely different movie. And that's, I think, the sign of any great movie, regardless of what genre or filmmaking type it is. If it feels like a different movie every time you watch it, I think that's the sign of something great. And Pinocchio kind of has that for me.
Yeah, I think what I love about Pinocchio is that it's everything that I talked about regarding the ending of Snow White, but for the entirety of the film. It's incredible what this film is willing to do in terms of its audacity. I mean, this is a film that features kidnapping, exploitation, alcohol, turning kids into donkey slaves. All of that is part of the experience. And again, that's something that would never get made today. I mean, all the iterations of it that we've seen since then have forgone that, or even if they featured that stuff, it's been so much tamer. But on the same token, and as we were talking about with Snow White as well, in terms of having its cake and eating it too, I mean, it has those darker elements that I think gives the film a heft, but there's also this poignancy to it regarding Geppetto and Pinocchio and their relationship, and Pinocchio's earnestness for humanism, and Geppetto's endearing, palpable happiness for fatherhood, and how that carries throughout the entire film. All of that, I think, is incredibly well balanced, and how it's able to cipher desire through all of these potential traps that the human experience can come with, which I feel like is amplified all the more today. I can't, it just makes the message of this film, I think, endlessly captivating and visceral. And that humanism at the center of it, of father and a son just wanting the same things really and trying to achieve that together.
Yeah.
I just think is really moving.
And it's one of those happy endings that I feel like is, and not to say that they're mostly unearned in these movies, but I feel like it's the most earned in Pinocchio, given the journey at hand and what these characters have, for lack of a better term, earned by the end. Like there is a sense of achievement and goodness actually striving for that I think the movie does a good job maintaining.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it's an all-timer. For me, it's not only one of Disney's best films, it arguably is their best animated movie. I think this is simply one of the best animated movies ever made.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think it's
I
like it.
If I speak even more broadly to it, now I haven't exactly done this exercise. I've laid out my top 20. This might be a top 50 movie for me of all time.
Oh, it is for
I
me.
love
It is
that
for
much.
me. Yeah, it's in there for me.
Yeah. So this isn't even close as far as I'm concerned. And with this ranking that we're doing,
so let me say,
we can discuss.
I like it. I'm glad that we've established our number one. It's not my number one.
But, Jay, you're such a jackass.
It's kind of like if you were doing an Orson Welles ranking and you do Citizen Kane first, and you're like, oh well, Citizen Kane is number one. It's like, okay, so let's figure out the next 10 or whatever. But I do like this movie. It has this wonderful combination of like y'all were saying, this sweetness and this dread, which I think it balances out very, very effectively. I don't think it totally earns its like, this is actually like twisted, bro thing. But that's not anything.
I very much disagree with that, but
it's not anything you can hold like against it, that reputation. But it is I think it's a very good film. I'm shocked that 3 of the 4 of us have it as the number one, but that's
I was hoping for more debating. I was hoping for less consensus picks.
Well, we're about to get to a debate because this is a film that I think multiple people are going to have it there like number 2 or 3, and I'm going to fight against as like very mid-tier of this era.
Don't you dare talk
Disney.
about my beloved Fantasia like that.
We're going to talk about it, and it is going. I am going to push it down a little bit. I'm going to push it down. Let's do it. Let's get into it.
Well, before we do, though, I do want to point out this irony, especially if we have any new listeners out there that haven't gone back to the archive yet. I find this conversation, honestly, I'm sitting here somewhat flabbergasted because, Jay, if we were to sit here and say, which of the 4 of us is the most cynical, we would all collectively point fingers at Jay as being the most cynical of us.
Oh, we were not supposed to do it live
and
on air.
he's the one here going, the cynical part of these movies, forget it.
No,
it's not that good.
No,
and I'm
no,
like,
no.
yes,
No,
give
that's
me
not
more
what I'm
of
saying.
that, please.
You have to earn the cynicism. There are movies,
and I think they do.
The problem with Pinocchio is I just don't think it's that cynical, and I think people give it that credit where I just don't. Which again is not like a point against the movie. I just think
I was
like
going to say that's not a knock on the movie. That's more of a
no. It's like a
how you
weird
respond.
reputation that I think the movie has earned. It's not points against the movie at all. I just think it's kind of odd that it's gained that reputation. But yes, I am the most cynical of all of us, no doubt about it. But
you wouldn't have guessed it based off this conversation, and I do think that reputation is earned. But
I don't
maybe
know.
it's more.
I
it
think
could
it's
be
still
more
there.
retrospectively because animated films since 1940 have not made those kinds of daring choices, and they just don't have that level of maturity.
there have certainly been plenty.
Some of them have.
Not Disney movies. Although
and
there
that's
have
what I'm
been
talking
Disney
about.
movies
Yes,
that
we're
have.
talking about Disney, so that's what I mean when I speak in those. When I'm
What do you
using
think?
that
Okay,
broad
so let's
terminology.
expand it out. What is the most cynical Disney movie? Is it Pinocchio?
Song of the South.
Well,
Yeah. That's the real answer, but if we're excluding that.
There it is, folks.
I think there's an argument for one of my, like a movie that most people don't hold in high regard. That is my 3rd favorite Disney movie because it kind of has this very emotionally complicated ending and it's not in this era. It's The Fox and the Hound, to me, has this extraordinarily complex emotional core to it.
There is a pathos to that film. I do love that. I don't know if
I love
it's
that
as
movie.
cynical as Pinocchio, but there is certainly a complexity to it that I do love.
Yeah.
But
I don't
Pinocchio
know
for me
if
is
I don't know if
easily the
cynical
most
is the right.
scary.
Yeah, for
Easily.
Fox and the Hound, I don't know if cynical is the right word. I think it's
Yeah.
more nuanced. It's
Well,
not
Pinocchio
willing.
technically has like a very happy ending, but
Well, they
Yeah,
all
and
do.
it's one I think earns its happy.
Well,
ending.
exactly.
Yeah, I think
So
if
it's
anything
a-
with
so
Pinocchio,
it's a
the cynicism I think of Pinocchio mostly comes from some of the harrowing images that it chooses to show.
yeah.
Which
That's fair.
So I guess from a superficial standpoint, if you're looking at it just what is actually given to us visually, there is some bold cynicism there.
And
So it
that's-
could be on the
that's-
surface at least.
And that's exactly what I am trying to articulate and maybe doing a poor job of, but from an adventurous perspective, the whole thing for Pinocchio is kidnapping and exploitation. And he's a child. But that's all the film does until the very end. And that's not something that's examined that
Yeah.
often, if ever.
Well, Brendan,
in
would
animated
you like to
film.
talk about AI for 45 minutes while we're talking about Pinocchio?
I mean, still my favorite version of Pinocchio, but it's not. I mean, they're both of my favorite movies of all time. So I guess there's a theme of brewing here.
AI is the live action version of Pinocchio.
All right, let's
the
move.
one we
Let's
choose to
move
believe.
on. Let's
Rude
go to
to Robert
Fantasia, where I can
Zemeckis.
tear it down. a
Anyway,
little
let's
bit.
go
do it.
to another dark movie and let's talk about Fantasia. What do you guys
Yeah.
think about this one?
I mean, I love this one. I mean, I think a lot of the argument that I guess people would have as to why it hasn't held up. I think this is something you might talk about, Jay. So I'll give you the floor after I speak. But I mean, I will admit it's a wildly uneven film. It's made up of what is it? 7 individual segments, maybe 8. I'd have to count them here. There's 7. There's 7, and not
Oh, I
all
got
of
it here.
them work.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, there's
Yeah,
8. There's
7.
8.
You're right,
There's
you're right.
there's 7, but there's 8 including an actual intermission. It's not really a movie. I mean, we talked about a lot of these animated movies from both of these eras that we tend to respond to because of how much that they vibe with us individually, and this is one that I do vibe with because I really do appreciate the musicality of it. But it is an uneven film. It kind of, to make my music analogy, it kind of reminds me of why I appreciate something like the White Album by the Beatles, which is so overstuffed. The album should be so much shorter, but I love how much filler that there is because it was a group of band members beginning to hate each other, kind of forcing individual songs into an album that don't make any sense. It's just kind of the point. And Fantasia is kind of this experimental tug of war. But when it works, it has some of the greatest things that I've ever seen in any animated film. Some of these segments, I think, are among the best moments from Walt Disney Animated Studios. So that's why I have to put some, I guess, edge to it. There's something about the musicality and how it all flows in an experimental way that I just really do appreciate.
Yeah. And to answer Jay's previous question, although, as you noted, Brendan, this is populated of various segments. So it's not a feature-length film per se, but the dinosaur sequence in this film is maybe quite easily the bleakest thing Disney's ever animated. That is incredibly dire.
Ever animated. Let me think about that.
Yeah, it is pretty harrowing.
It's in the conversation.
The whole
in the
thing is
conversation,
death
at
and
least.
destruction. Like that's all the sequence is dinosaurs dying for 15 or 20 minutes, whatever it is. But at the same token, I mean, that's not the entirety of the film. Obviously, there are other sequences that are much more uplifting and others that are just evocative in one way or another. And maybe this is hard to articulate because it is very much a vibe experience, but there's something about the artwork here, the interpretation of the artwork through music that I absolutely love, and I just find
an animated
astounding.
ballet.
So absolutely. So this is, again, it's not my number 1, but it's quite easily my number 2 of this group, and it's not even close. And it's a top 5 Disney film, or at least top 10. For
God,
me.
you guys are killing me. Oh my God. Ryan, where do you have it? Is this going to be like another unanimous number 2?
No, I have Fantasia low. I have it on spoiler alert, my number 12 out of the 13 here.
Wow.
I do not like Fantasia.
All right,
Never have.
I love this. Okay, let's
I
add a
feel
little
like
debate.
I feel like Fantasia is like the vegetables of the golden silver era, where
I like.
I was
vegetables.
forced to watch this darn movie so much as a kid, and people were like, "It's amazing," and I kept saying, "How about the ones with the actual interesting things and fun things for a kid?" And as I've gotten older, I'm like, I still don't like this movie because maybe it's the vignette thing of it all. Maybe it's just because it's all over the place, like Brendan said.
Yeah.
It's never connected with me. It's a personal thing on my end.
Fair.
I'm sure you guys love it. I'm not going to be like Jay and fight you to the death on it. I'm just going to say that I have it low here because of the fact that it
If
just
we don't
doesn't work.
fight a little bit, what are we doing here?
We already kind of did.
I'm willing
We
to
kinda
die
did.
on the hill for this, so we can end the podcast now if we have
right.
to. Because
I mean, I don't want to die.
I will die on it.
But I will say
I
this
think it's
movie
one
is
of their
bad.
best.
There's one movie on here that's lower than it, just because I don't care for it. But this one is one that, like, God, I hate the teachers that kept putting it on. You knew who they were too, and you knew if you got stuck on a rain day, you were screwed because they were going to put this thing on, and you were just like, man, I think they did it to get us to take a nap. I really think that was the case. This diabolical bastards. But yeah,
Fantasia is the most Malikian Disney's ever been. That's why I love it.
That's fair. But
Yeah,
for me as a kid,
Well, let me
yeah, are
let
we
me
talking
ask-
about? Are we saying you're saying it's as Malik as it gets?
It's pretty.
Disney?
There are very Malikian things in it. Ryan, let me ask you this, and you probably don't know because you already have your feelings set on this movie, and that's fine. Do you think you may have had a different opinion on this if you didn't see it as a child, and maybe you saw it later in life?
Maybe so. I think that's.
And I'm not saying that that's going to be the case. I'm not
I
saying
think
that
that's a
be.
fair case because you got to bring in when you saw these things first too. You know
You
what I
do.
mean?
Yeah,
You
you're
gotta
right.
Bring
You're
it
right.
in.
Certainly the Disney films for sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, these are nostalgia vehicles for all of us. So, like, you know,
And
just
maybe
that's just what they are. That the Wish Upon a Star and all that stuff.
Yeah.
The whole thing is built off nostalgia. So, like,
maybe that's what
you know.
helps me with this movie is that this was never one I watched as a kid. The first time I
might be
saw
it.
this was maybe in my mid-20s.
Yeah.
And maybe I was just in the right headspace for that. And that's, again, this is kind of one of these movies that I think is more of a individual me thing and how we defend it or don't defend it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like the worst thing I've ever seen. It's just like it's medicine.
There are some sequences here, though, that final sequence, what's it called? I'm
What?
looking up here. Night.
Sorry, Jane.
Night on Bald
I didn't mean
Mountain.
to.
Yeah,
I'm
Night
not
on
trying to
Bald
say it
Mountain,
like
yeah.
that, but it's
yeah,
like
it's awesome.
yeah.
That one's the best sequence.
Set to Ave Maria. That
Ave
one is
Maria,
so
yeah.
good. Yeah.
yeah, it's like a
Yeah,
full
that one's
Okay.
awesome. I mean, I like this movie. I have it at my number 8, so bottom half of this. I like barely like it, but like Brendan said, it's uneven. I think 3 of the 7 segments are super mediocre, like not very good.
Yeah. You know what I would say, and if this is my only real criticism of the movie that still stands, I do think the actual order or sequencing of these could have been different. And maybe that could have helped in a way. I feel like maybe they don't often like arc well enough with each other, and maybe there was a better way to kind of sequence it. Because I think about that first sequence, which is probably my least favorite one.
It's not good. It's the worst one. It's the worst one.
Well, I think I would have liked it more if it came later on, when I've already had my palate cleansed by some of the better sequences here.
I think maybe you bookend them with Sorcerer's Apprentice and Night on Bald Mountain. I think that might be the way.
It's like when you listen to a great album by a great band, is that sometimes the order of songs and how it creates almost like an arc, an emotional arc of sorts, is what makes it. And the sequencing here maybe could have been a little better. I could give the film that.
So yeah, I think high highs, a good amount of mediocrity, I think for now we're going to place it in the middle, below Pinocchio, ahead of Snow White, and we'll go from there. Agreed?
I think that sounds great.
Okay. Let's do it.
Okay, let's try to be a little bit more brief, as we're 40 minutes into this and have so many more movies to talk about. But let's get to where are we at? Dumbo. How do we feel about Dumbo?
Hard to watch.
Yes.
Very racist. There are characters called Jim Crow. It's tough.
Yeah.
But the baby mine sequence is like beautiful. So it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
I had a weird reaction to this one. Before this exercise, I would have ranked this one way higher, but I found myself kind of conflating the film because of how great that baby mine sequence is. I think the film is actually really good when it's a silent film. When there's no dialogue, there's actually a lot of charm to be had, but even at like a mere hour long, I think this is a very uneven film. So yeah, I've lessened on this one.
I agree. I'd put this last so far. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it. I think that it's just it's a lot. It's a rough skeleton, but it's also really, it's really heartbreaking. It's terrifying. What happened.
It's very good at its best, but it's not very good most of the time.
No, yeah, you're right, Jay. I mean, like the core story, just like the core story of Dumbo is I think really good. Everything, kind of the pieces around it, the extra stuff for me, usually that's what makes or breaks a Disney movie, to be honest, right, guys? It's the core story is probably pretty good. It's the extra stuff, the villains or the side characters or things.
Yeah, all the
world
stuff,
building,
you're
all
right,
that
Ryan.
stuff
Yeah.
can be in Dumbo a massive distraction. Even
all
now.
the stuff with Dumbo and Dumbo's mother, I think are really
incredible.
Good.
Yeah, it's
But
incredible stuff.
It's just not enough of it.
No, there's not.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. It does sound like I'm a
Way to
little
stay brief,
higher
guys.
on this. I'm a little higher on this film than you guys. I absolutely agree that a lot of the film doesn't hold up. But when thinking about it in the context of this exercise, because there's going to be other films that we talking about here that are narratively and thematically very average or below average. So yes, this is an uneven film, but I think thematically it's much stronger, much stronger than a lot of the other ones that we're going to talk about in terms of, the consequences of removing children from their mothers. And as you guys talked about, the baby mine sequence is one of the very best scenes of any film that we're going to talk about here. So as Jay was talking about with Fantasia, I think the highs of this film are very high. Its lows are very low.
Yeah,
I do agree. But ultimately, that's kind of why I'm in the middle on it, maybe even a little higher than some of the others that we're going to be talking about, which might be less problematic, but more mundane on the whole.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we're about on the same page on this one, Judy, because it's like a 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd for me is probably what I would give it.
That's exactly where I have it.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah, it's a good old 3 out of 5, and Tim Burton.
But we're going so far.
did the remake.
Is that acceptable?
Oh, what was that you said, Jay?
Last
At
place
5?
so far of the films? Below
I
Snow
think-
White?
Yeah, it can't be.
I would put
of the 4 so
of
far,
the
I
4,
think
it's
that's good.
still it's fourth for me of the 4 that we've talked about.
All right, well, let's go to the next one and let me crack my neck and get my defense mode ready.
Okay, here we go. Bambi.
go.
Is this where we're going to have the most of heated debates? We shall see.
I don't know. It depends on where y'all have it. I have it my number 3. I think this movie is magnificent.
It's my number. Number 3 of the 13
Yeah.
that we're talking about. It's my number 2 of the 13.
It's my
I
number
love
3.
it. Okay.
It's my number 4. Of the 13.
Okay, so no debate.
All right.
No debating. This movie's
It's
great.
a
Well,
really
the
good
debate.
movie.
No, the debate will be: does it go above Fantasia?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
For
I
me,
think
it
so.
does.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I
think
don't want to say. I don't want to say.
But
Oh
I'm
yeah,
a
it does. But I do
mean,
like
of
it more
course,
than
I'm a little
Fantasia.
biased, obviously.
Okay.
Collectively, I think it has to go above Fantasia.
Just, yeah.
Well, collectively, you guys do have it above Fantasia. I'm the only one that doesn't. That's
All right,
the math.
it's going above Fantasia. Okay, all right.
It's just a beautiful movie. I mean, like Jay's right. It's beautiful. It's heartbreaking. It's another coming of age tale, but done in a just particular, in a very dark way. And then I think I really enjoy the second half of the movie, or like the growing up sequences. I think a lot of people kind of forget about those. You know what I mean? And for me, I remember watching that as a kid, and it traumatizes you. But then as an adult, it just tears you apart. And so it's clear to me of this era, there are two movies that for me, just like of the gold era, the gold standard of this era would be Pinocchio and Bambi. Like those are the movies to me that I've gravitated back to.
Even despite Dumbo, even despite what we said about Dumbo, I like all 5 of these movies at the very least. I think overall it was a good era.
I agree.
I mean, there's one I wouldn't consider, but that's just a me thing.
That's
clearly, but
it's such a unique film that I think it's almost beyond the type of film criticism we usually give these
you're
kind
right,
of things.
Brendan. I will say that about Fantasia. It is unique. It is unique that every kindergartner in my class did not need a sleeping pill. They just need to put that thing on and.
That uniqueness that uniqueness is why I can almost argue maybe it should be above Bambi, because of the importance of the iconography of that movie and just what it represents for Disney as a visual medium. I think Bambi is a better movie. I think it almost has like a Richard Linklater-esque kind of like a revelation by the end, the way it treats coming of age in a very cool way.
Well, that's exactly what they were going for. They
were inspired by Richard Linklater in 1941.
They made segments of this movie for 15 years straight, 12 minutes at a time. So it was really just, when they put it all together, Disney was like, I can't wait to lose to Inarritu. You know what I mean? So, I would still put it above Bambi, but I get your points, Brendan. I get your. I would put Bambi, ahead of Fantasia. But
you would. I think it's really interesting that with Bambi, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, it's based on a book by Felix Salten, I think. There's a really interesting article on The New Yorker that talks about the book that it's based on and how bleak it actually is. It came out in January of 2022 by Catherine Schultz, and apparently she reveals that Felix Salten was, in real life, a pretty avid hunter. And this is the story that they came up with. So
that's fascinating.
And he's the bad guy.
It's really fascinating. Well, in the book, apparently he's trying to get into this notion about like legal versus illegal hunting and how it actually disrupts the ecosystem. And in a way, I think the movie it's not directly about that, but it kind of addresses that. Like, I don't think it's as one-dimensional as I think some people claim it to be. And I think there is something really kind of daring, maybe not daring. I don't want to use that word too often, but there is something complex
Certainly
about the way
bold.
It's bold, but it the way it portrays nature and man's relationship, I don't think is as black and white as some people make it out to be. There are complexities here that I think are really cool.
Interesting. It's a great film. I think it's gorgeously animated. Obviously, Bambi's mother's death is one of the most iconic moments in the history of Disney.
Yes.
I had totally forgotten, like y'all were saying, it happens 2/3 of the way through the movie. It is so much later.
I used to think it was like 5 minutes into it or something.
Truly,
I thought
it was like the scene of Up, the first scene from Up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it happens 2/3 of the way through, and it hits you as hard as ever. And as the film goes on after that, it truly is like man becomes the villain of the movie. And this, again, very complex. I kind of said I hate darkness for darkness' sake, but it's darkness for complexity's sake. And it really does make the movie a lot more challenging, in addition to all of the beauty that has come before it, because it does establish the beauty of this world that we live in, and then it undercuts that at the end of the film, which I think is such a emotionally charged choice. I love this movie. I think it's really, really great.
I also think it has a really great way of tying itself together in a full circle kind of way. In many ways, it kind of predates the same themes that we would see in The Lion King about the circle of life. It kind of has some notions that were even ahead of its time from a Disney filmmaking standpoint too.
Yeah. No, for
Okay,
sure.
so that is the Golden Age, the first 5 films that we're going to be talking about here. So, Jay, what are our rankings as of right now?
All right, so right now we got Pinocchio, MB, Fantasia, Snow White, Dumbo. Those are the 5
Okay.
right now.
Hey, did any of you guys see the new Dungeons and Dragons movie that came out?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did. Yeah,
Apparently,
I did.
people thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brendan and I reviewed it on the show.
We did.
Go check that out.
Yeah. Hey,
Apparently, it was a lot of fun. I didn't get a chance to see it. I am
Wait,
looking
what?
forward to it. I know. It was,
No.
one of the few things that I missed while my son was being born.
Yeah,
like
that's
you've
very
been-
important. I will
it's like
say
you've been
though,
stuck in the dungeon,
I
my
will-
friend.
I will say though, JD, if you choose to follow InSession Film, you might be able to watch this movie sometime.
That is true. It's a good way to watch this movie because we have 5 digital codes to give away for the new Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Yes.
I will be renting this on digital. It's a good opportunity for me to finally catch up with it. So yeah, follow us on social media, Twitter specifically at InSession Film. We will throw out a tweet for your chance to win one of these digital copies. So if you want to catch the film, be sure to follow us over there. The InSession Film Podcast is brought to you by our lovely friends over at First Time Watchers. Brendan, we're in the middle of doing this Disney ranking of sorts. And I gotta say, like this exercise, it's been a lot of fun. There's been discourse, some debate. I'm sure more debate to be had. And that is very definitive of the First Time Watchers, I would say.
I would also say it's very definitive of what color code we would give them. They are a golden movie podcast. They're not silver.
Well done.
They're not even
Yeah.
bronze. They're
the
certainly not-
golden.
I mean,
age
maybe
podcast.
they are wartime because they tend to battle each other every now and then.
Yeah, sure.
Either way, a great supporter of our show, a podcast you have to check out, hosted by Tim, Walter, and Hermano. They have a golden knowledge of movies.
They do indeed. On their latest episode, they talked about Wong Kar-wai, which we're sort
they're
of doing
stealing
right
our
now.
shine.
We're
Just
doing a Wong Kar-wai
really
series.
invading our territory.
They are.
Sons of bitches.
Very
We
much
do
invading your
know how
territory.
much Tim Costa loves the copy, the InSession Film Podcast.
Yeah. And maybe that's
That
why
is
they
true.
did it. They talked about Chungking Express in particular.
Yeah.
So following Ryan and Jay's footsteps there, but it was a lovely conversation. Definitely urge people to go
I
and
say
check
he's
it out.
fool's gold, actually.
He's
We love Tim though. We love those
Man,
guys.
it should be called the Fool's Gold Podcast.
The
Man, what are you
Fool's Gold.
thinking?
They should do it in old prospector voices. That would be really
There you go.
There you go,
There you
yeah.
go. Or like Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson in that one movie that they were in
Oh
together.
God, no one needs to talk about that.
Don't tempt them. They might do that. For
They
real.
might do that. Well, that's what's unique about their show. They'll pick out movies like really anything.
Wait, was
or
Matthew
they might.
McConaughey in a movie called Fool's Gold and Gold?
Yes, he was.
Yes.
And they are
Wow.
not tied whatsoever.
Crazy.
Or are they?
Absolutely. But anyway, the First Time Watchers, a very unique show. They pick out a movie that they've never seen before and discuss it to give a real fresh perspective on crossing off some films that are on their respective blind spots lists. They'll also discuss other movies that they've caught up with recently and maybe some new movie trailers if they're worth noting as well.
Yeah, they give out some great recommendations at the end of the show that I would urge you to pay attention to. It's very smart. It's creative. Maybe a little fool's gold, but that's why we love them.
Yeah.
So with that said, Brendan, where can we find them on the internet?
You can check them out at firsttimewatchers.podbean.com. You can also hit them up on Twitter at First Time Watchers and by searching First Time Watchers on Facebook. And that's First, F-I-R-S-T, Time Watchers.
Yeah, go subscribe to them on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Please leave them a review. At the end of your review, we ask that you leave a lot of hashtags so they know we sent you to them. And I think based off this conversation, the hashtag has to be Fool's Gold.
Yep.
They'll
Yep.
love that. They'll appreciate that. Leave them that review. Go check them out. Again, you'll love them. It's First Time Watchers. Hey, everybody. Just want to take a second here to talk about Livestream for the Cure. This is an event that has been taking place since 2017, and it is dedicated to raising money for the Cancer Research Institute. It's a really incredible cause that I've gotten to be a part of a couple of times, and I'm going to get the honor and the opportunity to join them on the live stream again this year. I'll have more details for that when they become available, but wanted to get this on everyone's radar. It's going to take place May 18th, 19th, and 20th. This is an event where they live stream content over the course of 3 days with various podcasters, and we raise money. And this year, the goal is to get to $25,000, a goal that we are going to hit. Again, you can find all of the information at livestreamforthecure.com, or you can simply click on this QR code right over here and you can donate there directly. So be sure to join us. Again, that's May 18th, 19th, and 20th. And you can go to livestreamforthecure.com for more information. So those are the 5 as we stand. Let's get on to the Silver Age then with Cinderella. Where do you guys feel about good old Cinderella?
My
think it's
God,
fine.
this movie has so much mice stuff in it. Unbelievable.
I had a
what
weird
you forget.
reaction. I had a weird reaction to this rewatching it because I remembered virtually everything from the movie, but I forgot most of it came from Cinderella. Like I thought most of it was from some Looney Tune or something like that. Because you're right, Jay. I forgot how much Tom and Jerry is actually in this movie.
It's a Tom and Jerry movie.
Well, I think we're going to use this word a lot when it comes to the Silver Age. Some of these movies are very uneven. And in the case of Cinderella, I think she starts to feel like an afterthought in her own movie.
Very much
and that's my biggest problem with it. Like, I think
Same.
the movie's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's cute, but this is one that doesn't hold up for me very well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This one's fine. Like it's not really particularly like blows my socks off or anything. It's very traditional. And I agree with you all. Like you start remembering all the other characters more than Cinderella. She becomes a literal afterthought in the middle of this movie. That being said, like aesthetically, from just the way in which a lot of the scenes in the scope is used, it kind of sets another template for because like you're looking at like the ballroom sequence or like the
It's iconic,
the sequence
no
where
doubt
she's running
about it.
away.
It is, yeah.
There are images and just shots that you're like, oh, okay, that's how they then were able to sort of use imagery to expand a world even in one location and have that sense of wonder there rather than just having to go on an adventure or primarily being like the woods or on the road or something like that. And I think the music's good.
Yeah.
I think the villain here much more sinister than something like Snow White. There's just something though about it that I can't put my finger on it as to why it's not like I don't fully embrace it. I like it, but I don't fully embrace it. That's why it's a little bit lower for me. Like on my personal list, I have it at 8. Because I got you at 8, but I'm not like But I could also move it to 7 because of like Dumbo, I guess. But that's the thing.
I have it
about Dumbo is,
last
like,
of the movies so far.
of all the
too.
movies.
Yeah.
Me too.
Not of all of them, but of the movies so far.
Oh, that
Yeah.
we talked about. Yeah.
Yeah, I probably have it around 11 or 12 of the 13, but it's
Yeah.
I feel bad saying that because it sounds like with you, Ryan, maybe we're in the same page here. What I don't like is how it functions as a movie, but I like the Disney isms about it.
Yeah. It's like
that-
it's a weird. Yeah, it's like a weird chasm between like being like, if it was its own thing and it wasn't attached to Disney, this would be a wild movie. And like, you know what I mean? Still,
Yeah.
because like its refusal to like be anywhere associated with the title character. And then like, it's kind of hilarious because when you think about it, you're just like, it's got so much other shit going on rather than like actually like getting into what I think a lot of other Cinderella adaptations have been able to do better which is to
Be
go
about the
into
main
her
character?
mind and be
Yeah.
about her, be about the titular damn role. So, but it's still,
Yeah.
you're right, Brendan. There's a sense of magic, and I mean, like, there's the music and everything that kind of goes with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's you can't detach yourself from that too, because it still functions within just like, I think what you're trying to say, Brendan, and don't, if I'm not quoting you correctly, I apologize. As a movie, like a regular animated movie, kind of weird, but as a Disney movie, it like what we think of as Disney,
It's an interesting
it
point.
functions, I think, a little bit, better in that.
Yeah,
realm.
I just love I love the songs. I love some of the Disney vibes, some of the Disney iconography of it. But when I think about it as a narrative from beginning to end, I
Yep.
just I
Yeah.
can't sit here and say it's a good and well structured movie.
There's
I
there's
agree.
a good short film here. If you edit out all the
mice.
nonsense, you have a
Yeah,
30-minute
So
good short
yeah,
film.
For the
2/3 of the movie.
stepsisters, you know what I mean?
I will. I
Yeah.
love the opening monologue, or not monologue, but the opening prologue. I think that is really well done.
Yeah,
If
Yeah.
the movie was about that.
good
Yeah.
stuff.
I have this 11 on my list as well, for what it's
Yeah.
worth.
All right, so
Oh,
are
yeah,
we
they
going? So is it above or below Dumbo?
I have it below. Much
I have it below
I have it-
Dumbo.
I have it below. Okay, so
I have it
Ryan,
below
I think
as
we're gonna
well.
put it below. Are you accepting of that?
I'm accepting of that. I can
Okay,
accept that
all right.
because it's below Dumbo. on my
Cinderella
list.
last place so far. Let's move on.
All right, let's get into Alice in Wonderland. Interesting little quirky film.
This
here.
one's
What
going to
do we
be
think about
interesting. I feel like
Alice?
this one will be pretty polarizing.
Could be.
This is the last movie on my list.
Oh, this is last place.
Oh, I think it's way better than that. But yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
No,
I'm
I don't
curious
like-
to hear what you have to say.
I just don't. It's again. It's one of those things. It's just focused on so much other crap, and that's the problem with like this whole story. It's just never been my jam. Okay, it's just never. It's like it's so stupid. It's just like visually speaking, great stuff, great animation. Don't get me wrong. Narratively speaking,
that's enough to make these.
it's not. No,
Worth it,
we've
Mike.
no,
That's
we've
Jay's
done this
thing.
before.
You're speaking his love
We've-
language there.
We've done Jay and me have done this before. Visually speaking, some things are fine, but then when you add the narrative, it falls apart. It's a
There
little
is
bit of
no
a mess.
narrative, Ryan.
Exactly.
So let's
Yeah.
not even
It's a
talk about
frickin'
it.
acid
this
trip.
this movie.
I never
is
go back to
so-
this movie,
Yeah.
and then like when I think about this movie too, I don't even think about this movie. I think about Tim Burton ruining my eyeballs. So it's like
That's
and
not
it's
the movie's
No, you
fault.
cannot
That's
hold
not
that
Bill's
against
fault.
this movie. No,
I
Yeah.
can, damn it.
No, you
No,
can't.
honestly-
no, you can't.
Honestly, this movie to me, I just never come back to it. And every time I have watched sections of this thing, I feel so tedious. It feels like taking your vitamins. It's very tedious. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like and
Interesting.
it just doesn't have the magic, for me at least, that some of these other films do. In sequences that I truly am be like, man, I really could watch that again. Like none of it really sticks in my memory. And so when
Yeah,
I was doing the rankings, I was just like, what? I can remember things, or I can remember moments, or I can remember sequences, or visually speaking something. This movie, I had to like go on YouTube and watch stuff. And even I'm like, God, that's right. I don't like this. Okay.
This movie is so aimless.
Yes.
So meandering.
And that's why
And
Brennan
it's one of
loves
its
it.
best
That's why I
assets.
love it. Son of a bitch.
It's
Oh my God.
this is totally a horror movie. It kind of is. But again, we talk about vibes. I mean, this is not one of my very favorites of this list. I probably have it around 7 of the 13 we're going to talk about. And I think really my only critique is that I don't necessarily think Alice herself is the most interesting of protagonists. But everything that she goes through, it almost doesn't matter, because if anything, this movie works for me most as an exploration in what you can do with animation. And that's really what this is for me. And I really appreciate that. It's not a movie I could sit back and watch from beginning to end as easily as some of these others, but I have such a wild respect for it that I feel an urge to give it a bit of a bump in this ranking.
If Fantasia is Malikian, like at Malik's best, this is Malik in his song-to-song years. which means I admire it still. Like it's uneven. It's not as good, but there's still lots
Hell
of love
yeah.
here. And I love how unapologetic the film is in that brazenness that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like the film fully embraces it and it does not care how you feel about it. Like you either vibe with it or you don't, and it doesn't care. And so like it's 10th on my list because I do think some of it maybe falls apart on its own logic a little bit, but on the whole, I really do like it though.
So this one, JD kind of nailed it. This is right up my alley. This is my number 5 out of the 13 that we'll discuss today. And
Wow,
and it
how are we going to
does
rank this
have-
one?
this
We finally
this
found
one's
one we're a
tough.
bit all over the place.
We're gonna have to come to a compromise here, but yeah, this one I think it is so visually inventive and consistently across like every segment. I think it's visually inventive, and I think its plotlessness is really an asset in this movie because it is kind of this trippy vibes kind of journey kind of movie, and I think that the scenes are so good that they kind of separate themselves and become kind of their own little short films in a similar way that Fantasia is, but I think the short films in this film are better on the whole. Like I think all of them are good, which is kind of the difference in this film. Incredibly memorable characters, great dialogue. I think for most of the film, exquisite animation. I think this is a pretty great film. But let's debate where we're going to put it here. Okay, collectively, it's going to go below Fantasia. I think we're going to agree on that.
No. I'm kidding.
Yes.
So I think the pivot point here is Snow White or Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, I definitely put it above Snow White.
Yeah, I mean, on my personal ranking, I have Snow White above it, but I mean, I'm not married to that preference necessarily. I think we can put Alice above Snow White. I'm okay with that.
No.
Ryan's like, nope.
So three of us are okay with putting Alice in front. So Alice is going in front.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
We're gonna have we have to compromise.
That's
right?
one
That's
is
the
an
whole-
iconic movie, and the other one I could give a rat's ass about. Like, what are we doing here? Come
All
on.
right. Let's keep going. Alice in
All
Wonderland
right.
sitting
There's
at
gotta
number
be a
4
veto.
so far.
We got to have like a veto rule when we do this. down the
No
road,
vetoes
like
allowed.
one
It's all about the
Nope.
collective.
Can we do a filibuster? How about that? We
no
don't have enough time.
filibustering.
Dude, this podcast is filibustered enough. Let's keep it
yeah.
moving.
All right,
I'm about
let's
to read a
move
bunch
on.
of fun facts about Walt Disney's life, starting with, did you know?
All right, let's move on to 1953. We noted it earlier, Peter Pan. I guess I'll go ahead and start this one off because this might be a JD special. I kind of feel about this sort of the same way as Jay was just talking about there with Alice in Wonderland. But similarly, this has to come with the caveat, like with Dumbo, that there are
This one's
very
one is
extremely
very
problematic parts of this movie. Like
Nothing at all that every other iteration is had to kind of course correct. What are you talking about?
Yeah, look, there's just no
we were actually
defending
JD and
that.
I were actually talking before this, and he said his favorite Disney song is "What Makes the Red Man Red."
No, that is not true.
And he was going to do a rendition right now, ladies and gentlemen. JD Durand.
No, but there are elements to this film that I truly love. Like when Peter Pan is at its best, it is one of my favorite Disney films, and that is the difference for me. So it is a very striking dichotomy. There's no defending the problematic racist aspects of the movie. However, as we've talked about many times on this show, I will never tire of Peter Pan stories. This is me at my core. Like the whole idea of being a child and never growing up, it's the best time of our lives, and embracing that for as long as humanly possible is something that is the ethos of who I am. And I see it in my son all the time with Sam. Like sometimes I have to walk away when I'm just watching Sam indulge in his childhood because I think about this. I think about that idea and what it means and how we live that in our real lives and how that manifest itself with me even as an adult. And obviously, when you grow up, there comes a point where you have to grow up. But where can you find that Neverland? Where can you find those moments in your life? I keep going back to that all the time. And it starts with Peter Pan in 1953 for me, and seeing that film for the first time, and something that's really stuck with me all these years. So I like when the film is functioning within that thematic umbrella, I think it is excellent. Like I said, one of Disney's best. You also get interesting moments like Smee telling Captain Hook that it would be more humane if they just slit Peter Pan's throat. Like, again, a line of dialogue that only happens in 1953 children's films that would never happen today. So you get some of those little darker elements to it as well that I love. So this is, I'm somewhat high on this film. If you guys aren't, I understand, but this is a JD film, so I'm quite high on this one.
I'll echo pretty much everything you said. I feel like I'm in the same boat as you on this one, JD. I mean, I like it. I guess I don't love it because of that dichotomy you're talking about. This is one of Disney's best while also being one of Disney's worst. Like it's straddling that line. It makes it kind of hard to see it as a well-considered final product. In totality, I don't know if I can defend the full movie in the same way, but the stuff that does work, like anything with Peter and Wendy, all of the comedic stylings of Captain Hook and Smee, anytime the crocodile's on screen, I think it's just a comedic hoot.
I agree.
Everything involving Tiger Lily and everything else around that. It's not even that it's culturally insensitive. It's just downright tedious as well.
It's tedious. It's boring. This movie's kind of boring.
The thing is, like, half of it is for me. I don't disagree, Jay. There are things about it that I think are a little tedious in that regard, but there are things that really do work about it. I think the final battle is kind of a hoop. I think that's quite a lot of fun, and I think it has some great evocative imagery as well.
Yeah. I think that's what makes it such an interesting conversation. I know that I'm going to be an outlier on it because I'm never not compelled by this film. Like, boring is the last thing that comes to mind for me. Like, I love. Like, again, I'm speaking specifically, exclusively to the Peter Pan stuff. I love everything about it.
Which is really good. It's really good.
It's some of Disney's best. Yeah. Now, the film on the whole, which is why, like, even on my own ranking, I think I have it like 7th. You can't defend certain aspects of the film. It is uneven in that regard.
It is kind of crazy. There are a couple movies here where it's like, I think there's a lot of great stuff in here. Will I ever show this to my child? I don't know.
Seriously, it's a good
and this is one of them. It's really this one and Dumbo are the two. But this one to me is like, this one is barely passable to me. This is in the Dumbo Cinderella zone of, I think there is some really good stuff here. I think the animation in this film is like great. And just for the record, everybody, these are pretty fresh on. Brennan just did some rewatches of these, but JD and I were supposed to do an entire series on every
one episode.
How do we not
Disney
acknowledge that this
film.
long into this episode?
Listen,
This is a
I
long time
rewatched
coming, guys.
every over the pandemic. I and I believe JD you did too.
Yeah, I did.
We rewatched every single Disney animation film. We were supposed to do
All
like this
60
long
of them.
series on it. We did one episode. It's probably the greatest episode of podcasting that has ever happened. It's a real shame that we didn't continue on it.
It's the
but-
greatest podcast because you both didn't rip each other's heads off while you were recording.
There is that.
Yeah,
It's
a rarity.
It was
But
great.
yeah,
Honestly, it was
Peter-
a miracle. You know,
Peter Pan for me is like, I agree. The Hook and Smee stuff for me is like electric. I think it's like fantastic. But there is so much of this film that I find very tedious. I don't find Peter Pan to be a very compelling character.
I don't know if you're supposed
in
to. I
this
think
film.
he's more of a compelling idea, and I think as a cipher for that, that's really. I mean, anytime I see a Peter Pan story, I always think to myself, Peter himself is never really the most interesting character. It's ultimately Wendy's story, and I do ultimately feel the same way about this specific iteration of Peter Pan as well. I don't necessarily think Peter himself is all that interesting, but everything involving Wendy Darling, I think, is very interesting. I like their dynamic. Don't get me wrong. I think it's really cute and endearing, but if there's any thematic potency to it, it's mostly because of Wendy.
I'm kind
I
of.
have this
Peter
one
Pan
at
says.
10. This one sits at 10 for me. It's sort of in that lower tier.
I have it at 8, so I'm not too far off.
Hey, gentlemen, I have it at 9. So way to be in the middle of you.
8, 9, 10.
But I know that it's a little higher for you, JD. I get it. It kind of goes back to the idea. The story of Peter Pan is such an interesting place to tap into. And really, I mean, you can have so much variety with it. I just feel like, wow, it's such an interesting story. This movie. We recently just talked about the Lowery film Brendan and I did.
Yeah.
It's making me think of, then the 2003 one, why people hold that so dear, and if the one that gets you from an early on or just gets you emotionally connects to you, then it's a pretty ripe story to pluck at the emotional heartstrings of anyone. Well, I was going to say you, cynical, love Pan, but no, I do agree. Like, God damn it, Jay. But no,
I go the rest of my life without ever hearing about that movie.
Totally forgot that.
We're talking about that next week. But
directed by Joe Wright.
Unbelievable.
Directed by Joe Wright.
Sure.
Is it though?
It's
directed by no one.
Got his name on it.
Yeah.
He's proud of it, probably.
Directed
but
by
anyway,
ChatGPT.
What I'm trying to say
Exactly.
here is that, yes, the
believe it.
problematic things of this movie, mixed with, I think, it's sort of at times meandering a little too much at times. I think that hurts it. That being said, there are the stuff with Wendy again and the stuff with Hook. Like, that stuff carries over from the Lowery film of being like really strong within the property. I just wish the sum would equal the I wish the sum was as good as some of the parts. You know what I mean? And and it's just not that for me. But
Look,
I don't hate. I think that this should be above at least Alice in Wonderland. But you put that
all
above.
right, that's interesting. Okay,
No
let's
Way.
talk about it because this is going to be tough. I think.
Yeah.
Wait,
I think
hold on. Did
one
I hear
important
you guys
thing.
right? You guys had it 8, 9, 10. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
We have this 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, there you go.
Oh wait,
I
you only
think
have
we were-
Peter. You talked about Peter Pan like you had it at like 3. You have it at 7.
No, I have it at 7. I mentioned that. I said that
Okay.
specifically.
All right,
I said I have
okay,
this.
I missed that. Okay.
I said
okay.
I have
so then
this
it's going to
at
go
7 because I can't.
So all right, let's look at it. It's getting tougher to rank these. So it's going to go below Pinocchio, obviously. Bambi, Fantasia. I think it goes below Alice.
Yeah,
I
I was
agree.
thinking personally. Yeah,
And then I guess the inflection point is kind of Snow White.
I mean, I have it above both those films, so it's up to you guys.
Wait a
I
minute,
say
wait
it
a
goes below. I say below Snow White.
Well,
is Snow White last right now?
No, Snow
Cinderella
White is 5th right now.
Oh, okay, and then it's Cinderella.
Well, there's
Then
also
it's Dumbo, then Cinderella.
This
Yeah,
is
I
hard
put it in
because I personally like it a little bit more than Snow White, but it's hard to put it above that film when the iconography of Snow White is so crucial to Disney's
I would put it
trajectory.
in between Cinderella and Dumbo for me,
I
but
don't know. Peter
I'd
Pan's
be willing to.
got
I'd
some
be.
incredible iconography.
I would
does,
be
but-
willing to.
Disney
but I'd
World
be
does
willing
as
to put
much
it
Peter Pan
above.
as
But
anything
Snow White
else.
got it first, and that's always going to trump it.
I would be
and that's
willing
fair,
to put
yeah,
it.
that's-
Yeah.
I'm willing to put it in between, sandwiched in between Snow White and Cinderella.
I think we've got Brendan. I think your heart is telling you below Snow White, and your head is telling you above.
Oh, my heart's telling me above Snow White. My head is telling me below Snow White.
Okay.
My head and heart.
All right,
are
so we've
both
got it.
above.
We're split here, above or below Snow White. This is a tough one.
I think you should go below.
Who does anyone here feel passionately about Snow White in any way whatsoever?
Yeah, I mean, like
The
it's,
ending?
I like it. I like the movie.
fun.
I like the movie. It's-
JD, you know what? Peter Pan is going above Snow White because JD had some very passionate things to say about Peter Pan.
honestly, though, the better film for me is Snow White. I will watch that one before I watch Peter Pan again, and I think that it is such an important film. You also throw in the honorary Oscars in there too. It being the first, I think that weighs a little bit more. I think that it's perfectly fine between Cinderella and Snow White. I think that that's a good spot for it. That's my opinion. That's my 2 cents.
Okay.
I think it's a compelling argument.
Yeah. I don't know.
All right, Peter Pan is going below Snow White because of the iconic nature of Snow White.
I think I'm okay with that. I'll just express again. I do like the movie slightly more than Snow White. But yeah, I mean,
you guys got Fantasia in the top 3. Like, come on, you
movie
can't win.
rocks.
It's the
Movie
same.
rocks.
We're going
can't win 'em all.
Peter Pan below Snow White. All right, that's what we're going.
That's
with.
fair.
All right, all right. I can live
right.
with that.
All right.
Okay.
What is next?
All right, moving
Let's keep
on
it going.
to the next one. We have Lady and the Tramp.
Dogs.
Dogs are good. I like dogs.
Dogs.
Dogs are good. Okay,
Love
this movie
dogs.
rocks. This movie's great. This movie's so
movie's
good.
Right.
I like this one too. I like this one a lot.
Yeah, I like it a lot,
I
too.
think this is one of the better Disney romances from this entire era, and it doesn't even feature humans.
Yeah. When we did
Well, and also
that,
I was talking to Brendan earlier, and he said his favorite Disney song is "We Are Siamese."
Yep, that's exactly it.
And now for his rendition, get the bass
I
out.
am
Let's go.
not
God.
singing or playing
No.
that song. You can't even pay me to do that.
at any rate, when we were, we joked a second ago about, rewatching all these movies during the pandemic. This was one of the bigger surprises for me because I never had any strong feelings about this film one way or another as a kid, but watching it for that exercise was pretty enlightening. I ended up really loving the film quite a bit.
Yep.
And it's very endearing. I agree, Brennan. Great romance, a lot of fun. Love the humor here.
Yeah. I love the beginning. Like, it just has the momentum, kind of reminds me of a Charlie Chaplin film, which I guess is kind of appropriate that the male character is named Tramp. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that is
love
deliberate or not. But it has the movement of an old silent romance film. I don't know if it was inspired by that or not, but you can tell the filmmakers here did more homework than perhaps they may have done for some of these other films in the Silver Era. I mean, even some of the dog mannerisms feel like they did some research, and I really admire that. There's a level of care and sincerity and authenticity to this one that really shows, and I think as adults we like it more because of that.
Yeah, I agree.
Ryan, what you
anything
think?
else?
I muted myself. I'm sorry. Well, I just it's fine.
Ryan hates dogs.
That's
Wow.
not
Yeah.
true. How dare you? She's right over there. How dare you?
They didn't win any Oscars. He doesn't like it.
That's
Oh.
true.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
Oh, the
true.
fighting words are coming out.
That's
Just
rude.
kidding.
I mean, it didn't put me to sleep like Fantasia. But no, it's one that personally I did not get a chance to rewatch. I have it just ranked lower, just as kind of a placeholder because there were other films that I remembered and I like more. I have a little bit lower. I will kind of abstain from this vote a little bit.
Okay.
But I what I do remember from my childhood is that I did like the film because dogs
Dogs.
rule.
Dogs.
Canine
Right.
loyalty.
It is
love 'em.
it is a little bit of a cheat code. I really like this one. I think it's extraordinarily sweet and
Well, Jay, you
pretty
like
funny
the,
at times.
Jay, you like the live action remake too.
I actually
never
was
did
kind
see
of
that.
charmed by the live action remake.
I was gonna say
I will not sit here and be like it's a low key masterpiece that y'all totally slept on. But I had a good time with it. I will say.
Good thing we're not talking about that film because then
Who
we
were-
would be debating.
who were the voices in that, Jay? Do you remember who the voices were? Was
Justin Theroux and oh my gosh, Tessa Thompson.
Is it Tessa
Thompson?
Thompson? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, as we've
That's hot.
established, Jay is the sentimental one of us. So that
And the
makes sense.
cynical
Yeah,
one.
exactly.
It tracks.
That live action movie is very, very sweet. I mean, it is. I don't know. We also have a Cocker Spaniel, so it really hits especially hard
Yeah,
for
I was
us.
gonna
But
say.
so let's all right. So
Where do we
let's
have
rank
this
this one.
ranked?
So
Of the
below
13,
Pinocchio,
I-
below Bambi, below Fantasia. The next one is Alice in Wonderland. I say my instinct is to put it between Fantasia and Alice in Wonderland.
I would agree. It's actually of the 13, I have it at number 5 for me.
I have it at 6.
I have it at number 5 as well.
Okay.
All right. So for the moment, we'll put it above Alice and below Fantasia.
Sounds good.
I like
that.
it.
Okay.
I like
All
it a lot.
Moving
Okay,
on.
moving on to the next one. I'm going to be real curious to hear this conversation.
Is this-
Sleeping
oh,
Beauty?
Okay, we need to add
baby,
30.
let's get into it.
We need to add 30
boy.
minutes to this episode now.
Here we go.
Let me tell you, this is the most artistically accomplished film, certainly of these 2 eras that we are talking about. One of the most gorgeously animated films I've ever seen, ever. I mean, you look at you look at the opening frame of this film, and it goes to that wide screen, and you were like, "Oh my God, this is a whole new era of animation." It is unbelievable how detailed the backgrounds are. And no, is it the most mature, detailed story of all time? No, not especially. But neither are hardly any of these films. And there are certainly maybe some more interesting thematic threads in some of the other films, but this, from a visual perspective, from just a pure aesthetic achievement, is unlike anything else that we're going to talk about today. And I think there is a lot to be said about that. You add in the very fun characters of the fairies, who I think are very funny and clever and just so enjoyable. And then
I agree.
Maleficent, is her characterization, especially complex? No, but she is one of the most visually iconic villains in history. In history, she is. And I think it hits its thematic marks effectively enough to totally live up to the real achievement of the film, which is the visual splendor of this film. You could put this thing on mute and I'd be like, this is the best film of this year. To me, that is really what I think about the movie. I think it is magnificent. It is an achievement in its animation, its beauty. It is the sleeping giant of this bunch because it is so underrated.
Well
and it
said.
is a beauty in and of itself.
That should be the bumper sticker. Can we retroactively go back and turn you into a film critic so you can put
God
something
damn
on the
it,
poster
Jay.
when it came out in 1959?
That's just good shit right there. I don't care what y'all say.
Let's go back in time. Let's do it.
Let's go back in time. Yeah, I would love to have
Go
seen this
back
back in
in
the
I'm
day.
going
I
to
would-
be lobbying for this. I know I'm not going to get it at number 1. I'm going to be lobbying hard for this to be number 2.
Well, I'm really interested in this conversation because I could easily put this one higher depending on the conversation we have. I mean, I really like this movie quite a bit. I feel like I'm not sure how you feel about it, Ryan. I honestly don't know, but I know how you feel about it, JD. At least when you watched it back in 2021, a couple years ago, and I feel like I might straddle the line a little bit between you and Jay. I actually think there's a lot of interesting ideas thematically here. I just don't know if it fully commits to them by its final minutes. In many ways, this kind of felt like a deconstruction of the usual traditional norms that Snow White introduced. It feels like it's kind of trying to change things a little bit. If anything, I think this movie's about bad parenting. That's basically what I feel like the movie is, because these 3 fairies, these 3 moms, if you want to call it that, the fact that they are basically telling this young princess that at 16 she has to leave to become a princess to then live with her real mother and father who she doesn't even know. I mean, it reminded me a lot of Studio Ghibli's The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, like just trying to rip someone from their childhood and throw them into royalty before they're even ready or even know what they want. And Aurora is kind of devastated by that. And even Prince Philip is kind of treated like this rich boy jerk of sorts. They kind of make a slight mockery of his status. And I like the way the film is kind of playing with that. I think the final 3 minutes completely undo it. And maybe there is a sense of irony to it. Like maybe by the end, and I'd be willing to be persuaded about this. Maybe it's meant to end with this sort of like joking irony that there is still this secret and hidden acknowledgement of the norms that are being tested a little bit here. I'm just not sure if the film rightfully gets there.
No, I don't.
But if I ignore that,
to be clear, I don't think the film is nearly that complex, and I still think it is far and away the number 1. So
I think there are some complex ideas here, but at the same time, if I'm going to talk about the visuals here, I don't disagree, Jay. I think as an animated vibe, we're going to keep using that word a lot here. Vibe. This thing is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And you're right. If you watch this as like a silent film, but you still kept, let's say, the musicality of it, I mean, it almost feels like a ballet, like a storybook come to life. It almost feels like you're looking at these tapestries on a ballet stage or something like that. And I love that. I love it for those reasons. But I think there's some hidden things here that are interesting. I'm just not sure if the film commits to them by the end.
Okay, so I have this at number 12.
Shun the non-believer.
I do not care for this film. I think it's fine, I guess. And really what saves it more than anything are the visuals that Jay is talking about.
Jay.
It is striking.
For our audio listeners, Jay got up and walked out.
And look, I get it. I mean, and the film is visually evocative. I still don't think it's my favorite of the films we're talking about here as far as my favorite visually, but it's certainly up there. It's in the top 5 of these films that we're talking about visually. I'm not going to undermine that. But unlike, and Jay mentioned it, a lot of this comes down to what you value. And for me, while I admire visuals as much as anybody else, it's certainly something that I take into account when analyzing these films and thinking about them. But I am much more drawn to theme and emotion. As we've talked about, theme and emotion are just as vital to a film's success as its visuals. And Sleeping Beauty, not only does it not fully crystallize its ideas, it actively sabotages them. It is thematically and narratively unsavory in the end. And for me, that really makes this film extremely tedious. Now, there are some compelling character dynamics at times, although oftentimes it's grating for me. But there are some moments that are good. But really the biggest issue for me comes down to Prince Philip and how they present him as this progressive, it's the 14th century. I don't have to marry a princess. I can marry a peasant girl. I'm open-minded. That's how they present him.
And I don't mind that about it until the very end. Those are the problems I have by the very end.
At the very end, the film throws that away as a joke to be like, just kidding. I don't really believe in that. I'm going to marry a princess.
That's why I think the movie at the end, there needed to be more of an acknowledgement of that, even if it's just a joke. I feel like the final 2 minutes specifically, it's probably Disney's biggest example of completely chickening out.
It's extremely disingenuous. Yeah. And for me, it really does, again, very actively sabotage.
Disingenuous. You can call it contradictory, but it's not like they're not going against their own code. It's disingenuous because the film is presenting Prince Philip, I think anyway, in sincerity as this progressive, open-minded figure, maybe a little full of himself, but earnest in that idea, only to then, in the end, completely walk that back in a way that I don't feel like is sincere at all. And so, like I said, I find like a
lot
purposeful deception, which I don't think is what they're doing. But
I mean, I still maintain what I said. I said what I said. I believe it.
Hypocritical, maybe, or whatever. But
I think by the end, I do think it is a little disingenuous. Actually,
I'm going to hold on to that, but you call it whatever you want. It doesn't work, and it's unsavory. It's bad.
Ryan, what do you think about it?
Heard of unsavory. I thought of once again about cake and pie. This is fantastic. For all of our audio listeners, you're really missing a visual treat of Jay's meltdown.
Jay, what did you beat up there? Was that like a stuffed Mickey or something like that?
It was a backpack.
That was my backpack.
Yeah.
I honestly thought it was a stuffed Mickey, and I thought that would have been so much funnier.
Honestly, it is kind of apt.
Believe it or not, I don't have a stuffed Mickey in my house. Yeah. But
that's unfortunate.
No, but yeah, Kermit.
Maybe when my child gets a little older.
Okay, fair enough.
Anyway,
back to
Kermit,
though, and he's
Sleeping Beauty. I have this. Where do I have this? Number 5 on my list.
Did you say number 5?
I think I'm number 5 on my list. Okay. I think that this movie is really good. Like visually speaking, we all can agree on that.
Yeah.
We can all agree visually this is a very good movie. Obviously, a lot of Jay's points are absolutely on point. I think of the Disney princess movies that we have here, this is the strongest, clearly. It's the most complex, I think, in its narrative. I think it has the best villain, obviously, of those films.
That dragon.
I think
that dragon.
that dragon, the
awesome.
green fire, right? Its imagery is fantastic. I understand where you're coming from, JD, because I do think that like the story as itself, and how it kind of breaks down by the end could be, a little contrived, I guess you could say. But for me, I get caught up in it because I do think that Brendan actually breaks up good points as well, because the complexity of this relationship dynamic, of these rules, that this medieval sort of storyline that they're doing here. It's very rich and it's very complicated, and I appreciate that complication put forth in the story enough, mixed with it thematically and what it has to do with the idea of a sense of not of coming of age, but then also of abandonment of who they are. And then just the third act, for me at least, is visually incredible and takes it over the top, especially like Brendan was talking about by the end. So I just think it's such a strong movie. It's not my favorite, obviously, Disney princess movie of all time or anything like that, but it's the one that I go back to a lot, and I saw a lot when I was a kid, just because I think it's kind of cool, but it's also a lot of it for me visually was a lot of fun. So I don't have it at my number one, but I don't think it's the worst. I think I think clearly
It's high praise.
High praise, right? Ain't first or last, you know what I'm saying? But I think that it should be ranked above the Cinderella and Snow White, definitely above Alice. Like, I think that there's more to this movie. There's a lot of meat on this bone. Every time I go back to it, as I've gotten older, and then I think about like this story and how it's been kind of redone and tried to tap into it, and it's never been as interesting as this version. For me, at least, like for me, this version, whether it's the live actions or whether the other different animated or live action versions of this whatsoever, this version in particular has always stood the testament as being the singular Sleeping Beauty story, and for me, I think that carries a lot of weight for it as well. But that's me being an outside factor,
Right,
probably.
well,
When I should.
let's go to
The
hold
$1 million
on,
question: where are we going to rank this sucker?
I just realized I'm in charge of the spreadsheet. Number 1, Sleeping Beauty. No. All right, so it's obviously going below Pinocchio. I think it's fair to say it's going below Bambi. The next one is Fantasia.
I
Going
still have
below
Fantasia. I still have it below Fantasia.
Okay.
I have this ranked twice. I have the first 90% of this movie ranked at my number 3. I have the final 5 minutes ranked at like 72.
That's
Well, let's talk about. Okay, so it's going below Fantasia. The next one is Lady and the Tramp. Can I get it above Lady and the Tramp?
I don't like it.
If we want it to go below, that's fine. That's fine. Okay.
I think it should be above.
I think Lady and the Tramp's above.
I still like Lady and the Tramp slightly more. But I have more respect for Sleeping Beauty.
All right.
This is hard.
Okay,
This is hard.
so given that Ryan says above, it's my number 1. Can I get it above Lady and the Tramp?
I mean, we all have our number 1 at number 1. It ain't moving, and it's not here. I think that's kind of fair. But I know where JD. I mean,
I want the collective.
Still,
I want the
if
collective
Fantasia
to agree.
is still above it, I'll give you that.
If y'all want,
can parlay something else.
I'm okay with putting it above Lady and the Tramp just because I'm willing to give this film a few more chances to see if I'm able to come around to the ending in a very intriguing way. I still like Lady and the Tramp more. I will say that.
I'll say this:
still stand by that.
if it's Ryan, you say it's above Lady and the Tramp, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I say it's above, so it's 2-2 on that front, and it's my number 1. So I say we put it above Lady and the Tramp.
I mean, I'm fine.
Is that
with
fair?
I am
Okay.
fine with that. Yeah.
All right.
Sorry,
JD's like,
I
"Fuck
love you.
no." I mean, JD's like, you.
I mean,
bastard.
it's where I sit on it. I would have this at 72, like Brennan said, if I could. I mean, the only
Hey,
saving
I'd
grace
have
for me is the
Fantasia
visual, so.
erased from the books. So let's go. All right. Like,
All right. Well,
So,
all right,
I mean,
just
that's
put it.
it's the yeah.
Hold on. I didn't even mean to, but the computer automatically put it at number 1. It's like some sort of code that they've put into Google
So
Sheets.
I guess with that, we'll have to end
Jay-
the podcast because we've had a computer malfunction. The worst film on the
I
list
guess
is at number
this
1. We
hour
have to end
40
it
was
there.
wasted.
JD, all right, JD, no, truly, JD, if you feel that strongly about it, I'm willing to put it below Lady and the Tramp.
I mean, I do, but I don't.
I think that's
I don't.
That's a good
I
compromise.
also
compromise.
don't think, because if I was to put myself in your position, and which we sort of did earlier with Fantasia, right? Because I am a strong 1B with that. So like anything like that,
But
film falling
Ryan
below,
really doesn't like it.
yeah,
and I
and so
let you
we've
guys
had
put
that
it in the
conversation,
top
and
three.
I'm and I have this last, but I don't
Sitting
think
back
we
and
should,
having fun right now.
I don't think we should put as much stock into my passion for it if you guys have it like in that 4, 5, 6 range.
This week's episode was
If
brought
it's
to you
below
by
Pinocchio, if it's below Fantasia, which it sounds like it is, then I think that's a fair compromise.
Okay, I'm good with having my favorite at that point. Thank you, gentlemen. What's next?
Okay. So then we move on to 101 Dalmatians.
All right,
All
this
right.
movie rocks.
Yeah.
This-
I have
this
this
movie's
at number
amazing.
4.
Number 4 for me.
This is my 2.
This is my
Okay.
2.
Sometimes I
Okay,
think
so
it's my
we all
number
love
3.
Yeah. Hey, isn't it nice to be back where we're all agreeing?
good.
There's like 2 minutes of like it got real sad there, and then by the end we were
Yeah.
like, "Hey, it was a Disney movie right there."
I was
You want to talk
rewatching
about
this-
you want to talk about a movie with good vibes. That is what this movie
This,
is.
yes.
This movie
movie-
should have been written by the Beach Boys because this has got good vibrations.
It really does.
Marky Mark.
I was
You
rewatching
talk about
this
the
before.
jazzy energy of this.
Yeah,
I
the
actually
vibration.
like the animation of this movie is kind of more crude, but I think it's really
Wait,
the
the
way that it
Croods?
should be animated given this movie's energy. I think it's
Yeah.
really clever, and Cruella de Vil obviously super iconic. It's also just a
Song,
really
too.
again dogs, love dogs.
Gotta love a dog.
It's just
And
I really like this movie, and it sounds like everybody else does too.
I think the argument can be made that this is maybe Disney's most stylistically referenced movie ever, because like just the overall vibe of it, like with the opening credits, that jazzy score that you're talking about there, Jay. Like I was getting early Pixar vibes from this movie.
Like some Monsters Inc.
Yeah, maybe like just from a sense of humor standpoint, a little Ratatouille in there. Like I could see Brad Bird isms throughout this. And it also feels very British, so maybe that's part of it too. And why that kind of like crude animation, like it's not in a way the animation's not great, and that's kind of its biggest asset. Like it has
It's a grimy movie.
Yeah,
in
it's a
a
very
way.
dirty. It's a very
it does feel like the
movie.
budget was cut, but that feels like an asset.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
I agree.
Absolutely. Yeah, this movie's
Yeah.
great. It's
I know.
wonderful.
I think about the film actually quite often in that regard, because Dakota, our dog, loves to go outside and dig himself some holes, and his face is kind of ish white, but oftentimes he'll come inside and he is brown head to toe, and I'm like, oh, we joke about it. It's him. He must have watched 101 Dalmatians and he's trying to relive it outside. That's what he's doing right now. Or he'll go outside and he'll howl when he hears other dogs barking, and it's like he's doing the line, like he's carrying on the message. So, we live this, in our lives all the time, which is to say it's great. I think about it a lot.
And it's also a good romance. It's
Yeah.
I think at least of this silver era, it's one of the better romances as
I
well.
agree.
It's, of course, this and Lady and the Tramp, probably the two best romances of
Dogs.
I mean, well, as far as humans, like
Yes.
Roger and Anita.
Horace.
Yeah.
Or no. Not Horace. Horace is the bad guy. No.
Yeah,
Roger.
Horace is a bad guy. Roger and Anita, like they're not even really well-defined characters, and yet they just have great chemistry, and that's all you need
Yeah.
here.
That's all that matters. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they love each other. They love their kids. They want to save everybody.
But him just playing his
yeah.
piano up there, it's just like what incredible energy.
Oh,
It's just
and
so
you
good.
and you guys know how much I usually don't like voiceover narration. The voiceover narration here from Pongo's perspective is
It's great.
I'd almost be hard pressed to say it's the best voiceover of any movie ever. Like it is so good.
Yeah.
Better than any Malik movie. Better than
Yeah.
I don't really Malik as voiceover narrator. That's prayer. That's prayer.
That's just part of the poetry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, where do we rank this then?
Well, Ryan, what did you? Where is this for you?
Got it at number 2, folks.
Okay, number two.
Wow,
All right, so
wow,
the question is,
yippee-yo,
it's going to go below
yippee-yay.
Pinocchio. Is it above Bambi?
Not quite below. It's below Bambi for me. I still have it slightly below Fantasia, but given the love that some other people have for it, if we want to weight it above Fantasia, I'm not opposed to that and putting it at number 3.
I think it is definitely going above Fantasia.
Okay.
But is
JD?
it, JD, do you like it more than Bambi or less than Bambi?
I have it right behind Bambi.
Okay.
But Fantasia in
All right,
front
so
of it.
Bambi's going to go 2. That's fine.
If we did it at 4, is that okay?
Oh, I'm
I
more
think
than
I think it should be above Fantasia because Ryan, you have Fantasia at 12.
Yeah, but I'm willing to compromise with the group. I mean, like, JD just
But
compromised.
all of
with
us
you,
have
so-
all of us have 101 Dalmatians in our top like 4.
4. Yeah, so putting it at 4.
And
would
I have
be okay.
Fantasia at like 8.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, but they have it like 1A or 1B.
I have it at 3.
and he has it at 3.
Yeah,
so
but
it's
you
my
and I have
1B.
101 Dalmatians at 2.
yeah, I know.
But that we just had that argument where you put weight on Sleeping Beauty because it was your number 1, and but now
Yeah,
we're
but
not
Sleeping
doing
Beauty
that.
went below Fantasia. If all of us have 101 Dalmatians in our top 5, correct?
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I have
nobody
that.
dislikes 101 Dalmatians. Ryan and I have it at 2. I think it goes above Fantasia.
You know what? The more I think about it, I think I might like it a little bit more than Fantasia. The more we talk
right,
about
there we
it,
go.
so I'm
That's it.
okay with that.
All right.
At 3 or 4. Can't say I wasn't willing to compromise. JD.
Collectively, I think it belongs at number 3.
Okay.
It's kind of a surprising one. I feel like most people listening to this might not expect something like that, which is
Yeah, I agree. I was surprised that everybody liked it that much. Okay, let's talk about a worse movie.
All right, Sword in the Stone. I have this last at 13.
13
movie.
for me.
terrible movie. Terrible.
Okay.
Ryan? I don't agree.
Of course, he's got to make this
yeah,
difficult.
this is number 3.
Are you kidding me?
Having a number 3, folks. Sword and Stone.
Wait, this isn't a bit.
This is not a bit. Number 3.
What?
Right
This
here.
has just screwed up everything.
No, I am not backing down. This is going at number 13.
No, this can't go at number 13. Can't go there. I got too much nostalgia with this movie.
The best
I watched this
character
movie way too much
movie
as a
is the
kid.
female squirrels. That's
Absolutely.
it. That is it.
Absolutely. And that was a sequence that I remember.
Wait,
showing
this
my
is
wife.
this
still
is
can't tell
this
if
is
this is a
real.
bit or not.
I still don't think this is real.
And I remember showing her, and it was one of those sequences we remember. It was one of those like, oh yeah, you remember seeing that, and I said that, and then we saw it, and so anytime I think about the squirrel sequence, I think about my wife. So if you don't like this movie, and then that
I'm
means
still
you
thinking
don't like
this
my
is,
wife.
the shoe is about to drop
Yeah,
here.
I'm
at
I'm
some
trying to
point.
find where.
Just say
he's
it's
re-
actually 13.
He's referencing another movie that probably takes this source material. It's
No, it's I'm not. It's a lot. It's a fun movie. It's a kooky movie. It's a kooky fun movie. I don't know what you guys are complaining about. Like, it's fun. It's not
Jay
bad.
Market at 13.
I mean, it's not. It got any problematic things in it. I mean, we're gonna put.
Yes, it does. It's bad.
I'd rather see. I'd
It's
rather
pretty
have problematic
how
things.
bad it is.
I'd rather see problematic things
We're gonna
than
put
tedious.
Dumbo's racist crap and Pinocchio stuff. And,
Sure.
And Peter Pan stuff.
We
ahead of
shouldn't be
this?
ranking these lower just because it lacks problematic.
No, I'm trying to give. I'm trying to give it a little
So
bit of
here's
credit.
the
It's a
here's the
good
question:
movie.
Do we give Ryan the courtesy of putting it above Cinderella?
No.
Okay, I agree. All right, Cinderella, Sword in the Stone is number
I love how
13.
I was like 5 seconds ago compromising with you, jackasses, and then now you're like, no, this is 13. I've got to sit with a list that's got Fantasia at 3. all right, or 4 or wherever it is now. And now I get this. This
Ryan, if there were 19 movies, including Old Dogs and Cocaine Bear, I'd put Sword in the Stone last place.
Cocaine
So
Bear. You know what?
that's actually not
Put it
true.
wherever. It's fine.
I still can't tell. Was that real or was I still don't
It's
know?
a real thing. I've got it at 3 on my list.
Okay. I couldn't tell.
All right, so
love that
okay,
movie.
so
I am
sentimental.
baffled right now.
JD and Brennan, do we give him a courtesy?
I can't do it. Ryan, I love you, man. I love you, but like if I'm ranking if I'm ranking every Disney movie that I've ever
Sorry,
seen,
Mom.
every Walt Disney Animation
Dad.
Studios movie, which admittedly I've only maybe seen like 45 of them out of like the 61. This is in the bottom 5 of them all for me.
Oh no.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the other 3 of us are so firmly in last place that we have to put it in last place.
What's at
Kinda
12?
Like, yeah, it's like
What's
the
at 12?
Pinocchio thing, right?
Well, the next one above
What is last place right now currently?
the previous last place was Cinderella.
Oh. Well, yeah.
Cinderella
I
was
mean,
there.
you can't.
We can't put it above Cinderella.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would get destroyed. We might get
It's last
destroyed.
place. All right, final one. Let's go to the last one.
Just put it at last.
Okay, the Jungle Book. Where do you guys have the Jungle Book?
Put that last.
This movie is not that good.
It's not good either. Put it last. There you go. There's
It's
your
not
veto.
that bad.
I have this
it's
at
a-
number 4 or 5.
John-
Whoa, okay, I'm not that high
Number
on it.
5. Wow.
I got it at number 5.
That John
I have it
Favreau
at,
movie way better than this.
Oh, I don't agree. I still like it better than the live action.
Nope.
I have this at number 11.
I have it at 9.
11.
Yeah. And if we did this before our 2021 campaign, I probably would have had it at like 13. Or, maybe not 13, but like 10, 11. It was one of the biggest surprises for me. I found
changed?
it
What
was
changed?
It's got some great songs. I'll say that.
It does. Yep.
Yeah, the musicality is amazing. Musically, I think it's. I like a lot of the stuff with like. I just think the movie gets a little sidetracked. If I'm being honest, it's just the momentum of it doesn't really work for me. But I love a lot of the dynamics between certain characters. Like if this were just.
It's funny you say that, and sorry to cut in, but it's tied to what you just said there. I think part of the rewatch for me, and to speak to what you're saying, because this obviously comes off the heels of, what we just talked about with The Sword in the Stone, or for me, Sleeping Beauty, or even Alice in Wonderland and how aimless it was, or Cinderella. We joked how the central character of that film is never in it.
Yeah.
I found the Jungle Book way more seamless in its storytelling comparatively to those. And coming off the heels of watching all of those back to back to back, I couldn't help but have noticed that significantly in the Jungle Book. Then there's the music of it. And also circling back to what I mentioned with Peter Pan in terms of, how I am, tethered to emotion and theme. I think there is something really compelling here about Baloo's transformation from laissez-faire individual to being this genuine foster parent. And I was quite moved by that. Something that I wouldn't have really cared much for pre-being a parent. But I think the last 15 minutes of the film truly slay. I think it's really good.
Wow,
So,
you even like the final like 3 minutes?
yeah, I think it's
Where it implies that Mowgli only wants to join humanity because he thinks a girl is cute.
I didn't say it was perfect.
Brendan is very
I
like
said it was good.
anti-early Disney last 2 minutes.
I gotta tell you, the last 3 minutes, man. I mean,
I found
y'all
that less problematic than Sleeping Beauty.
You know what's funny? I remember a couple
That's
of.
fair.
I remember last year getting like dog piled on for like not liking the last like 10 minutes of Lincoln and thinking that like that was like supposed to be like the worst thing about me in my life. And now I've been hearing tonight that 3 minutes of every of these movies is like the worst thing.
I mean,
about me.
3 minutes in
I
a
think-
70-minute movie equates to 10 minutes in a 2.5-hour movie.
There you go. So therefore, I was right about Lincoln. Rate, review, and subscribe. Click down below. Let's get out of here. Let's go. All right, let's go.
Look, an ending can make or break a film. For
It really
telling
can.
you.
At least how you feel.
Brendan,
Yeah.
Brendan and I have joked many times, like if if we somehow walked into a movie late, like we're just turning around and coming back another time, or
Yeah.
like we're not leaving for bathroom breaks because you might miss a significant moment that could
Hey,
change a movie for you. So
Big Jim says if you got to take a bathroom break, you can just go.
Big
buy
Jim
it.
can suck it.
All
when he
right.
says that.
All
Do not talk about
Papa-
Big Jim that way.
Hey, you don't talk about Big Jim like that. That's coming from me.
And that's
but
also
look,
coming from someone that loves the way of water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
I
so much
will
better
say
than you with
say
this.
this though about the Jungle Book. I have it at 5, but I'm not as deeply passionate in its favor as I'm anti Sleeping Beauty. So you guys figure it out. Like I don't.
You dirty, you're a
whatever works
dirty
for you
dog.
guys. Yeah.
So I have it. I think this is one of those movies that is a bunch of pieces that don't really fit together. Whereas I think some other movies, like Alice in Wonderland, I think fits together better. So let's go ahead and
'cause
rank
that
it
that
here.
one's at least consistently aimless and deliberately so.
Yeah,
it-
and more consistently inspired, I think, than the Jungle Book.
Jungle Book has good things. I love everything involving Baloo, and even Bagheera I think is a really clever character in and of
And
himself.
if we're going to use legacy as an argument like we did for Snow White, then it has to be above Alice in Wonderland. There's a huge legacy for.
Well, Alice in Wonderland
Book
is
more so
above
than
Snow
Alice.
White right now.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's just I'm just saying that's an argument we used.
It really
before.
should.
And maybe we
which makes
move
my point
Alice in
has a
Wonderland
much
again.
better
Let's
legacy.
do okay. So let's place Jungle Book here, and then we'll do a final ranking. We'll see if we want to shift anything. So it's going to be obviously it's going to be below Pinocchio, Bambi, 101 Dalmatians, Fantasia. I think it's going to be below Sleeping Beauty. It's going to be below Lady and the Tramp, I think.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Going to be so after Lady and the Tramp is Alice, and then Snow White. I think it, in
I would
my
put it
opinion, it
after.
goes below both of those. But tell me if you disagree.
I disagree. I would put it after Lady and the Tramp. That's where I would put it in this ranking.
So let's go around the horn. Jungle Book or Alice in Wonderland? Brendan,
Alice in Wonderland.
Ryan.
I mean, why don't you just give me a selfish choice of two movies I don't like?
Well, then if he doesn't like it,
I
then
would
do.
say Jungle
called The
Book
Way
by a small margin. I have it
All
at
right.
11.
Well, this has gotten complicated.
Well, I have it at 11, and I have Alice in Wonderland at 13. So,
And I'm much higher on it.
yeah.
Okay, I think if someone has Alice in Wonderland as the last movie, we have to put it behind Alice in Wonderland. Or ahead of Alice in Wonderland, sorry. So,
Okay.
The Jungle Book ahead of it. I mean, I guess that's.
Right,
I
so
guess
we're
that makes
going-
sense. Yeah, if we're gonna go take the weighted average mentality here.
all right, so let's just go down the list here. Anybody shout out if you feel like something is egregious. All right. So these are
There's a
At the
lot
moment-
here that's egregious.
at the moment our final rankings. Pinocchio 1, that's going to stick.
Yeah.
Bambi 2, I think that's going to stick as well. 101 Dalmatians, I think is at a stone. Then we got Fantasia at 4.
Okay.
Yes.
Ryan, are you at peace with that?
I mean, if you want to flip it with Sword in the Stone, I'm totally fine with that. But that's
Nah.
He's going to have to live with it. Okay.
I think we'll keep it at 4.
I'm gonna have
5,
to. Live.
I've got Sleeping Beauty, which is me. Which is me. I am Atlas holding the globe on my back of Sleeping Beauty at 5.
Honestly,
That is
right
going
now,
to
I'm so
that is
angry
going to
with.
stay there.
I'm so angry with all three of you. I'm willing to move because of your hate for my childhood. I'm willing to move Sleeping Beauty up a spot just to spite all of you.
Like I agree with you, but well. Okay, well let Ryan.
I'm
Where
just
did you?
kidding.
Have
I'm not
Sleeping
going to
Beauty?
do it out of spite. I'm not going to.
All right. Okay. All right.
All right.
So Lady and the Tramp at 6,
Yeah, that's fair.
and then I think we start getting into the mixed
The murky
category.
waters.
Yeah.
We have the Jungle Book, Alice in Wonderland, Snow White, Peter Pan are 7 through 10.
I just can't have Snow White that low, guys. That just seems,
Snow White is at 9.
that seems too.
I'm
low
okay
for-
with that. I'm actually okay with it.
I like it too. I mean, people might disagree, but again, it's the weighted average of the four of us.
Okay.
That to me makes sense.
I'm all right with that too. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in a weird. I mean, we talked about the iconography and the importance of Snow White and why it should maybe get a little bit of a higher ranking or a bump there. But honestly, considering that, I mean, I would probably rank the film lower personally still if it weren't for those things.
Jesus Christ. All right.
Okay, so we got
And we're
Peter
not taking
Pan
away
10.
from the legacy.
Good Lord.
I like the
We
film.
got well, JD again. I mean, I know you're a huge fan of What Makes the Red Man Red. Do you want to put that up? Higher?
Not a fan of that sequence, but I'm okay with.
Okay.
Look at those.
how
Okay,
we
we'll leave it
structured
at
Look at
that.
those rosy
ranking
cheeks.
there.
You know what I mean?
Dumbo, Ryan, you were talking about how you think Jim Crow is actually the greatest Disney character of all time.
I'm not the one who dressed up for him as Halloween like you did.
We got to stop making those jokes. We're gonna get in
Oh
so
man,
much
this
trouble.
show's gonna get flagged from YouTube right away.
Is going to be so
right.
angry with us.
12,
joke.
Cinderella, 13, Sword in the Stone.
Absolutely not.
So that's it. I think we're good.
Okay, I like it. I
I'm
think it's
okay with
fine.
it.
Right.
It's not my
Yeah.
ranking, but I think as far as our consensus,
So just
Okay.
if
all
we
right.
ignore
So to run
Ryan's
it
love
down,
for Sword in the Stone, which I still
to
don't
run it
believe is
down
true.
quickly one more time.
Top 3, you heartless bastard.
That is an insane. I could not believe. I thought it was a bit when you said that. Truly, I thought it was a bit.
I did too.
Stop thinking my
Yeah.
honesty is a bit. You've been doing
But
this for 5
you
years.
said it like it was a bit. Like
I'm not
was
saying
your
it as a
tone
bit.
or inflection.
It's real. It's written down.
Okay, I believe you now, but
I believe, yeah, because
in
now it's
time,
no
in real
longer a
time.
bit. Now it's just tired if it were a bit. But now I believe you.
He's either really committed or this is number 3.
All right.
I'm
So
not that good of an
consensus.
actor, right?
Consent.
I'm a way better
Consensus
writer.
again. We've got of the gold and silver ages of Disney animation: Pinocchio, Bambi, 101 Dalmatians, Fantasia, Sleeping Beauty, Lady and the Tramp, The Jungle Book, Alice in Wonderland, Snow White, Peter Pan, Dumbo, Cinderella, and The Sword in the Stone.
How
This
about
was a pretty
that?
fun little exercise, boys.
How about
Yeah.
that? This is the premiere and only ranking for these movies you can ever hear.
Exactly. It's the be all end all.
Yeah.
No one else can change it. That
If you
that's it.
disagree, you're wrong.
Somebody put Sword in the Stone higher, for God's sake.
Wow. Good job.
God. All right. Well, that's it. I guess stay tuned for next week when we get to the other eras of Disney. People,
Is that what we're doing next week?
No, I'm just kidding.
I
But
was going to say,
Maybe one
Because,
day.
you know, we
I thought
probably-
this was fun. I enjoyed this a lot.
if you thought like killing my nostalgia this week was bad, you just wait until we do the Renaissance.
Well,
Good Lord.
I
Seems like
think we've
you
already
know-
decided that for the well, actually no, I think we already decided for the Little Mermaid what that episode is going to be. But now we may have to do the same exercise for the Renaissance era instead.
honestly, I kind of
It's
think
fun.
that would
I
be the
think-
right thing to do.
the people
so
might
that-
just demand it. They may
Yeah.
demand it.
I think
So,
Brendan's just going to take a flame torch to my dreams and my childhood adolescence with that episode with his evidently shocking opinions. So I'm just waiting. I'm waiting to like.
I think there would be a consensus winner of the Renaissance era as well. But
No,
no,
that didn't
No.
take away from the
No,
drama of
no.
this episode, even though y'all
no,
three all
there
have-
will not be.
That's
a
really
consensus.
interesting.
There will
Y'all
not be.
all three had Pinocchio. That's crazy.
Yeah, but there ain't gonna be a number one that's consensus on that episode. I'll tell you
no, not at all.
that.
Interesting.
okay. Should we do the poll or should we skip it because we've gone so long?
Let's do the poll real
We
quick.
can do it very quickly. I
okay.
can get to these results very quickly.
Okay, let's
Do the
get
poll.
to the poll.
Real bad. Okay? I don't like those numbers at all.
Just one poll. Those things aren't scientific.
Yes, they are. All this is science. This is math.
The poll, we asked all of you, what is your favorite feature film directed by David Lowery? Of course, this is inspired by Peter Pan and Wendy, his latest film. We threw out all of his feature films, his 6 feature films, even including his small film Saint Nick, which many people haven't seen. And of course, yeah, I know you've seen it, Ryan, but apparently most people haven't seen it because it got no votes.
Jerks.
This was only a 2-horse race, winning the poll at 50%. The Green Knight wins the poll at 50%. At 46%, A Ghost Story. And we got 1 vote for The Old Man and the Gun.
Hell yeah.
That was Brendan.
No, I voted for Pete's
kidding.
Dragon and apparently it didn't count
Nice.
because everything else got no votes. But yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Makes
Actually,
sense,
no,
okay.
I feel like voting now just to vote for Pete's Dragon. You know, the more I think about it, that might be my favorite David Lowery film.
I made an error
movie.
when we
I like
talked
it.
about Peter Pan and Wendy, Brendan. I said that the Green Knight was my favorite, and I went and looked back at my rankings, and I agree with my rankings. The Old Man and the Gun is my favorite. I think that movie
interesting.
is incredible.
one too.
And
Well, let's talk about a lack of consensus picks. Do we all have a different favorite David Lowery film?
Yeah, mine's Old Man and the Gun, and it's actually kind of grown from the. I mean, one year we're going to do a 2018 retrospective or exercise where we all come back here from the first year we ever did an InSession Film Awards and redo those rankings, maybe. But that's moved into my top 5 for that year. I've rewatched that movie dozens of times. It is insanely rewatchable.
It is,
and it's
Dozens,
so good.
multiple.
Yeah, I watched that movie. Is like one of those that it gets sucked in on like HBO, and I am watching that, and it's a breezy 95-100 minutes.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot better than The Sword in the Stone.
Well, mine is a ghost story. I think that movie is
you're correct
kind
there,
of
you jerk.
transcendentally great. I think a ghost story is great.
Yeah, I think a ghost story is quite profound. I love it.
But
Interesting. For some reason, I thought you may have said The Green Knight, JD. That's why I thought we.
I mean,
have
that's
rankings.
That's my
Best movie of
Pinocchio and
2021.
Fantasia. Those are 1A and 1B as far as I'm concerned.
That's my
but-
Green Knight is my least favorite before Peter Pan and Wendy, which is bad. Sorry.
No, it's
Peter
not
Pan
bad.
is
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's
Green Knight's incredible, Jay. How dare you?
No, I'm not saying Green Knight. I'm saying Peter Pan and Wendy is bad.
No, but
I still
Green
like
Knight-
it.
Green
I
Knight-
love
Knight
it.
rules.
Like it.
I'm surprised you don't like the Green Knight because it's driven by its visuals, which are
It's visually, yeah.
astoundingly awesome.
I understand that, and I need to watch it again. Actually,
You need to rewatch that movie. That's the thing. You only seen it once, right?
Yeah, I need to rewatch it.
Yeah, I think you'll
own
like
it.
more.
On 4K.
Okay. Well, with
nice.
that, thanks to everyone that voted on the poll. Really do appreciate it. Stay tuned for next week. I will not be here. I will be out of the country.
Just doesn't seem right. You already come back 1 week and you're on vacation.
I
Where
know.
the hell's that in the
I
world?
won't.
Come
I
on,
won't,
HR?
I won't be here either.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's going to be Ryan and I holding down the fort.
Yeah, exactly.
Doing some
talking about the sword, and
something
stone
Marvel
next week.
related. MCU rankings, perhaps?
Yeah, we'll probably do an updated ranking given the release of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. We'll see how things have shifted now that we're in Phase 5 of the MCU.
God, that hurts.
Looking forward to hearing you guys talk about that. Be sure to check out some of our latest reviews. We have one for Showing Up. Jay and I talked about Kelly Reichardt's latest. There's a review for Peter Pan and Wendy. Speaking of, go and check that out. We'll have a review for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 coming soon as well. Stay tuned or be on the lookout for Women in Session as well. They talked about John Huston on their latest episode. That was a lot of fun. Thank you to all of our lovely patrons. Your support there really helps us out. You can sign up at patreon.com/InSessionFilm if you want to help us out there.
Yeah.
Be sure to leave us reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Obviously, subscribe on YouTube. Check us out there on YouTube if you want to watch the podcast, not just listen to it. And there's been some incredible visuals, speaking of, on this episode.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you're listening to this, go to YouTube. Some good stuff. I think that you'll appreciate. So,
Jay
I
is
brought
such a
some real
violent
physical
man.
comedy to
Such a violent man.
So yeah, be sure to subscribe on YouTube. You can always email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com if you want to get a hold of us there. Gentlemen, this was a lot of fun. Really appreciate you letting me come back for a week. You might not see me until the end of May. The next few weeks for me are going to be quite bonkers. So, but I'll try to be
scheduled
back by the end of May.
a JD special episode for the end of May if we can make it
Yes.
happen.
Yes.
We'll see.
Yeah.
That's my goal is to be ready and prepared.
I don't know what you're
for
talking
that
about.
episode.
Sounds good.
Yeah, really looking forward to that. And when I come back at the end of May, I should be back full time, hopefully.
Hell yeah.
That's the goal.
And then
That's
JD
the
and
goal.
I are
Alright.
gonna test out the
Wow.
Ryan JD theory.
We got to do a Ryan.
You got to test it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We got to
That'll be
do
the
a
greatest-
Miami
the
Vice
greatest-
part duh.
Hell no.
I want no part of that. Trying to mediate that one last time was a nightmare.
We won't do that again.
There
But,
was no
at
mediating.
any rate,
There was only you were getting hit by shrapnel. That was friendly fire, is what that was.
Anyway, JD, get us out of here before
all
it
right.
starts
Thanks
again.
for listening, everybody. We will see you next time on the InSession Film Podcast.
Miami
Pinocchio
Vice
is the
rules.
Throwing the stone rule.
I like Walt.
Go Fantasia. It's awesome.